the heck is in my house, everybody? I'm down here in the basement doing my show, and all of a sudden it sounds like there's a party happening. Somebody showed up at my house. They didn't text me. They just showed up at the door. Who are these people?
Are we going to get evidence of the paranormal on This Week in Science Live?
No.
We may.
Oh.
No.
We may.
No.
I did bring a story. It's not even in the rundown yet. It's further quick at the end.
Ooh. Quick news at the end of the hour, or 2 hours, however long the show is. You guys, we're live. We can actually do a show. Should we do this?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Everyone, I don't think people upstairs realize I'm doing a show, or they do, but they don't realize that they're stomping and being loud. So I apologize for the background noise. I will try.
Not hear it at all. We're fine.
Yeah.
It's not coming through at all.
All right, starting in 3, 2. This is TWIS. This Week in Science, episode number 679, recorded on Wednesday, July 18th, 2018. Science is always new. Hey everyone, I am Dr. Kiki, and tonight on This Week in Science, we are going to fill your head with old bread, spider balloons, and poo. But first...
Disclaimer. The fast approaching future will be here in no time at all. In fact, whoosh, there it was, racing past us. As always, we have decisions to make. On the one hand, there are the many things we ought to be getting done, daily lists of responsibility, things what always need doing. And on the other hand, 4 fingers and a thumb, likely grasping a mobile type device and seeking idle distraction. In the back and forth between mindless tasks and mindless distractions, it can sometimes become a mystery why we need a mind at all. I'm not saying it's our fault. No, it certainly isn't our fault. I'm blaming you, and you should too, because you of all people know that there's always something productive you can do to keep your mind active and engaged in the world around you. In fact, you're doing it right now by tuning into This Week in Science. Coming up next.
I've got the kind of mind I can't get enough. I want to learn everything. I want to fill it all up with new discoveries that happen every day of the week. There's only one place to go to find the knowledge I seek. I want to know what's happening. What's happening? What's happening this week in science? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening this week in science?
Good science to you, Kiki and Blair.
And a good science to you too, Justin, Blair, and everyone out there. Welcome to another episode of This Week in Science. We are back yet again to claim and disclaim and explain and enjoy all the science that is to be had. And I'm doing a show right now, Kai. I'm doing a show. I was wondering what the stomping was. Can you go take the stomping? Can you go back upstairs and say goodbye? Good night. Good night.
Yeah, but can I do something?
No.
I have a pet crawdad. I got it today.
You got a pet
awesome.
crawdad. That's
Very
great.
Nice.
We had the roll. The show flow was going. Kai, go back upstairs. I love it.
Not to break up the show flow anymore, but we had a crawdad feed once at a friend's house.
Duck, Kai.
And
Just
the
duck.
crawdads were there's no
Kai,
crawdads in this area. They
no.
were flown in from Louisiana. Live crawdad feed.
Carbon footprint on that rather high.
Yeah. Well, but it came with a pilot who was already making the flight. So it wasn't like we put it on the thing. There was more stuff on the plane than just the crawdads. But anyway, in the course of the crawdad feed, should I be talking about eating crawdads? Because the kid just got one as a pet. I don't know. Maybe I'm breaking it.
I mean, it's good to have a healthy connection, I think.
But
He's
one
able
of the
to
crawdads,
eat
because these were live, got away, got into a neighbor's yard, and the neighbor called the animal department of the city.
Fish and game.
like, because there was this creature, which if you don't know what a crawdad is,
Yeah.
don't
They're weird
identify that
looking.
that's a crawdad.
Yeah.
It looked like the largest alien insect creature from space.
It's a land lobster.
No idea what it was, and like called the police, the animal department, shut like all the things. Right, it was like the most hilariously wonderful.
I love it. What is it? It's a crawdad. It's a large.
Yeah. We found one at Lake Merced once when we were doing habitat restoration, and the kids were so confused.
So confused. All right. Okay. Crawdads. Yes. My son now has a pet crawdad. It came home from camp with him today. He said, Mom, I have a surprise for you. We have a pet. So
Oh
now he
my.
has a pet crawdad because he got it. They were either going to eat it or he could bring it home because it's apparently an invasive species in the stream where they were today. So
now it's one in your
Yikes.
house.
Feel like should have called home about that one. Maybe give the parents a heads up before a pet gets taken home. But
That's
there
right.
you are.
Land lobster on the loose. Yes, and I hear they're wily and try to escape all the times. Right now it's a little tiny thing, but it'll grow. It's going to grow. Either that or my child will be terrible at taking care of it and it will die.
Oh my God.
We're going to do it. It's his responsibility, not mine. Yeah.
Anyway, good science to you.
Right. Yeah, we are here to we're here to disclaim, explain, talk all about all the science that has happened in the last week that we saw and thought fit to bring to your ears and eyes this week. So much news for you tonight on This Week in Science. Oh my goodness, I brought a bunch of fun stories. We're happy to have Blair back. Welcome back, Blair.
Yes, I'm so happy to be back. Thank you for having me back. Every time I'm like, are they going to decide it's better without me? Give me a call.
No. Okay, but I have to know. I mean, you were, this was work. You were fixing the world. Have you fixed the world?
I helped create an 18-month strategic plan to help lay into place plans to fix the world. Yes.
A plan to make more plans. That is great. Okay.
Yeah. Strategy is important, you know. We can talk more about it in the after show, but it was fantastic. I worked with a bunch of climate change communicators and climate change communication trainers about a decentralized model after a 10-year NSF grant to help spread the knowledge to 75% of informal science learning centers around the United States over the next 10 years.
Cool. Well, it needs to be faster than that. I'm just saying. But
we're doing
anyway,
our best.
I know. And we have some great, we have some climate change news on the show tonight for you. I brought a story about science taxes. We've also got, I've got some stories about microbes and behavior and space volcanoes, because those are always fun. Justin, what did you bring?
I've got old bread, glowing with evolution, why religion is bad for the economy, and it isn't an alien.
It might be an alien. No, it isn't an alien. It might be a crawdad. It might be a crawdad. And Blair, now that we have you back, what is going on in the animal corner?
I brought koala tongues, more flying spiders. Every week from now on, it's going to be flying spiders and waiting in line.
Wait, this is just, okay. I'm super excited about this one. You're waiting in line with a bag full of koala tongues and you're flying. You're gonna take off with the flying spiders. Yes. Yeah. Okay. This is how it works. This is how we roll, everyone, as we jump right into the show. And as we do, I would like to remind you that if you are not already subscribed, we are a podcast and we are also available on YouTube. So you can find us any place good podcasts are found. Head to TWIS.org for more information on subscribing in various locations. Now it is time to start our science rundown. This week, Jupiter topped off the news. Very exciting week for Jupiter. So at the end of last year, it was reported by a team led by astronomer Scott Shepard, out of the using the Cerro Tololo Inter-American Observatory in Chile. that they'd found 2 more moons for Jupiter.
So many moons.
So many moons. And at the time, it was a nice 69 moons. That's it, 69 moons. And it was like, wow, 2 more moons. That's a lot of moons for this large planet. All right. Well, this year, just this last week, scientists, led again by Scott Shepard, using this same observatory in Chile, have announced not 1, not 2, not 3 more moons. 10 more moons.
Wow, that is so many more moons than any planet really needs, isn't it?
At what point are they no longer moons, and is it just rubble?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, because there is a question of where these moons came from, right? And some of them seem to orbit close in to the moon, the large ones. There's the Galilean moons, Io, Europa, Ganymede, Callisto, and they orbit Jupiter in the same direction of Jupiter's spin. And they're kind of near other moons that orbit in the same prograde fashion. And so they think that these things were all bits of a moon collision at some point in time. So yes, rubble. It's not there. It's moons because they're roundish, roundy round. But it's round rubble. It's really round rubble. So these moons, though, are further out. They're further away from Jupiter, and they travel retrograde. So in the opposite direction of Jupiter's spin. And then there's another group of them that are even further out. So there are these different groupings of moons, 3 different groups of them that have their own orbits. The prograde moons very close in, and then 2 groups further out with retrograde orbits. And they think that all of these groups, again, well, they're rubble, roundy round rubble. That's it. And they happen to be maybe 3 larger moons that at some point had various collisions with objects and broke up and became smaller moons. Now, that explains up to the 78 moons. There's 1 extra moon that's a weirdo. And it orbits along with the retrograde moons kind of in the same way. In their path, in the same, but not in the retrograde motion. It travels prograde. So it's in the same path as these retrograde moons, but go in the opposite direction. It's the salmon swimming upstream. And so the research
line with Jupiter and the rest of the moons that aren't acting weird.
Yeah, it's all in line with it. It's not like it's not.
So it's the normal one. It's the normal one.
Meanwhile, all these moons are going in opposite directions, hitting each other, breaking apart, making more moons.
Exactly. But the thing is, this one moon, they think because it's the one oddball that it might not actually have been a moon originally. Whereas they think all these other moons came from collisions and larger original moons. They think this one is a solar system object, like a comet or something that got sucked in by Jupiter's gravitational pull.
Or what we were talking about before last week, right? It could be one of these planets that was in our solar system initially that got pulled in by Jupiter's massive gravity and industry, right?
Yeah. It's possible. Could have been
part of why we don't have the Kuiper Belt. Jupiter just kept sucking stuff up. It was a big
right, because Jupiter's this massive thing. And so it's got a lot of what we think goes on in our solar system, we think is a result of Jupiter and its massive gravitational pull. So, yeah. 79 moons.
Wow. So I just looked up because I was like, what even is a moon? Right. So I found a source that says a moon is a natural satellite orbiting around a planet that is itself presumably orbiting a star. That is it. Period. I love that. So that means the definition itself is pretty big.
It could be these objects could be a lot of things, right? It could be various kinds of objects. And so they think that as they get better vision, better eyes on Jupiter. I mean, we've got Juno at Jupiter right now, taking pictures of everything around, and we're going to be looking at it. And as telescopes imagery continues to improve, like there was this wonderful image of Neptune this past week that had it from Earth that shows storms occurring in the atmosphere of Neptune. It's a beautiful image, and it's all a result of optics and the algorithms that are used to get rid of the influence of Earth's atmosphere on the light that passes through. And as this all improves, they think that we're going to find even more moons around Jupiter. That it's not, that 79 is not the top. They think it's going to keep going up.
Can you imagine what tides would be like on a place with that many moons?
No, I don't want to.
It'd be a mess.
I mean, the tides on the moons themselves is very interesting, which brings us right, which brings us to Io, a moon of Jupiter, which I have a story about. It was looked at by Juno's Jovian Infrared Auroral Mapper instrument. I can easily say that as GIRAM. GIRAM. And as Juno flew past Io, it looked at it with GIRAM, and GIRAM found a new volcano on Io. Io is a very volcanic moon. It is a lot of the forces that lead to the volcanism are not the result of, say, like the forces here on Earth, which are the result of the magma and in the mantle moving against the crust and the buildup of pressures and these forces actually within the Earth itself. No, the forces on Io are a result of the gravitational force of Jupiter. And
got lava coming out of the.
Yeah, it's being pulled and stretched and pushed, and it's all sorts of volcanoes all over it. And similarly to the moons of Jupiter, they think that even though they've found this new hotspot, this new volcano on this flyby, they don't think they're done there either. They think they are going to find more volcanoes on Io the more they look at Io. There are about, they think, an additional 250 volcanoes awaiting discovery, which is kind of crazy if imagining just hundreds and hundreds of volcanoes. Io, I'm going to say, is not a place I'm going to visit on my next vacation.
Yeah, sounding like Jupiter in general, just not the hot spot. Haha, we were anticipating.
There we go.
Vacation club, no thanks.
Yeah, so the moon already has about 150 mapped volcanoes. Some of these volcanoes blast lava 250 miles out into space. So it's just a lava spewing moon.
And
Cool.
yeah, that lava
Bursting at the seams.
Staying in space, right? Like it's becoming the moon's moons, maybe even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The rubble spewing rubble. There we go. It is. Yes. So this, really exciting news. And there is another flyby of Jupiter that just happened 2 days ago on July 16th. So everyone be ready for more amazing images coming from the Juno mission very soon. There's some great stuff to find online if you go searching for it. And then my final story to bring us through the initial part of our show, taxes. I'm going from space to taxes.
Well, NASA's publicly funded, so it doesn't make sense.
It is, but this doesn't have to do with the public funding of research. This has to do with taxes that would potentially be levied on industry, things like the coal industry. And what I'm talking about is a carbon tax. Carbon taxes are very debated right now. Some people, the House Republicans right now are on the verge of introducing a resolution that, this is from The Guardian, an article by Dana Nucitelli, denouncing a carbon tax as, quote, detrimental to American families and businesses and is not in the best interest of the United States. Well, there's a lot of debate about the how a carbon tax, what influence would it have on the economy? What influence would it have on American families? How would it affect our world moving forward? Well, Stanford Energy Modeling Forum, EMF project. This is the Energy Modeling Forum, EMF project. They have examined economic and environmental impacts of a carbon tax, kind of putting the tax amount somewhere in the middle of the various models that have been proposed so far. And what the studies that they included in this model basically were pretty consistent in determining that a carbon tax would be effective at reducing carbon pollution and would have a very negligible effect on the economy, which would continue to grow. It wouldn't make the economy shrink in any sense. A carbon tax would allow the economy to continue to grow, maybe have a slight dampening effect on it, but the benefits of reducing carbon pollution and also air pollution as a result of a declining coal industry would have a much more positively beneficial effect on life around the planet and the economy moving forward.
There you go.
So, yeah, new study. Carbon tax.
Short-term versus long-term goals here. So
I think that's pretty much it, Blair. It is looking at what do we need now, but the short-term impacts that potentially the House Republicans are concerned about and are maybe lobbying against don't seem to be that large according to these studies. And so this model, the Stanford EMF studies, are basically putting evidence towards science, towards promoting a carbon tax as one of the possible legs of a solution for our climate change woes.
But did this study say anything about the impact on campaign contributions from coal companies as a result of a carbon tax? Because therein lies the question, I believe. But I do think overall, focusing on human health, that whole element of climate change is something that we don't see talked about very much. And there is an economic impact when human health is involved. And if you're going to remove a stressor on human health, economy always benefits.
Yep. So, exactly. The economy, remove the stressor on health. The economy will benefit because more people can work and will be healthy. And then, so that it's all part of it. It's actually the number of parameters that are variables that are included in these kinds of things. They're very large models. They're not simplistic. It's not one thing in, one thing out. It's very large systems. But anyway, I just thought it was a very, as you're coming back from your climate change meeting, and I thought this was a very interesting scientific stance on a policy issue. So for anyone out there, once again, this is the Stanford EMF Energy Modeling Forum project, and you can look for it. We will link to this article in our show notes. Justin, you got a story?
I certainly do. It's around here somewhere. I just need to figure out where aha! 4,000 years before the dawn of agriculture, researchers from the University of Copenhagen. This is them now, not 4,000.
Not 4,000 years ago. Okay.
Before the dawn of our agriculture. It's not 14,000 years ago. It's right now. University of Copenhagen, University College London, and University Cambridge have analyzed charged food remains from a 14,400-year-old Natufian hunter-gatherer site, which puts it about 4,000 years before the dawn of agriculture. A site known as Shabaika 1, located in the Black Desert in northeastern Jordan. The results are published in the Journal Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, provides the earliest empirical evidence of bread production. And what's sort of fascinating about this bread production is that it is 4,000 years before the dawn of agriculture. So it's a pretty good sign that agriculture may have spread out of a necessity to utilize resources we were already utilizing for many thousands of years to sort of get better control at. So this is quoting voice from University of Copenhagen archaeobotanist Amir Aranz Otegi, who is also first author of the study. The presence of hundreds of charred food remains in fireplaces from Shabaika 1 is an exceptional find, has given us the chance to characterize 14,000-year-old food practices. The 24 remains analyzed in this study show that wild ancestors of domesticated cereals, such as barley and oats, had been ground, sieved, kneaded prior to cooking. Remains are very similar to unleavened flatbreads identified at several Neolithic and Roman sites in Europe and Turkey. So we now know that bread-like products were produced long before the development of farming. The next step is to evaluate if the production and consumption of bread influenced the emergence of plant cultivation and domestication at all. So she's still leaving that open, although I think it becomes a pretty clear path from relying on this resource for thousands of years, and then as people move, they want to take that bread fixings with them.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I was giggling to myself for a moment with a vision of the wild ancestors of the domesticated barleys roaming the plains in wild herds, herds of barleys running away from the the hunters that were chasing them, the gatherers that were gathering them. But really, I mean, it is. I think it's fabulous to have this historical aspect of the history of one of the main food sources for around the world. And to know that there were these fires and that, you know, we've got these charred remains, these things that once were, this once was bread. We've been making bread for a long time. People figured out how to put things together and make them into more complex mixtures, to make them more easily edible, to make them last longer when they were traveling across the plains.
Yeah, and it's also it's a University of Copenhagen also archaeologist Tobias Richter. He goes on that the Natufian hunter-gatherers are of particular interest to them because they lived through a transitional period where people became more sedentary and their diets began to change. So it's sort of interesting. Like, yeah, you would think bread would be a good packing for the long haul, but I guess, you know, you're still a hunter-gatherer. You still do plenty of trekking, right? They've found in the past flint sickle blades as well as ground stone tools at the site, which is for a long time made them believe that they were going to find something to do with plant exploitation. But flatbread certainly fits the bill. And it shows also that baking was invented before we had plant cultivation. That's also added to this list of things we've been doing for a really long time.
So when people are trying to villainize bread and say that it's very modern and that you should be eating nothing but cultivated crops that are more natural, turns out bread is actually older. There you go.
Yeah. Bread has been a very healthy, dense source of caloric nutrients for a very long time. And this is just further evidence of it. Yes. And the idea that our paleo ancestors weren't eating grains, that's just hogwash.
Yeah, so eat your bread. I'm going to go eat mine.
I love my bread. This story makes me very happy.
Yeah. The bread hunt must stop.
It must. I know. Give me my carbs. Give me my grains.
Sweet carbs.
Sweet. That's right.
People in those days also ran an average of 20 miles a day. So we should also.
Oh, snap.
I made that one up. I made that up, but I bet
20 minutes of something.
Hey, me too. And then I sat at a desk for 8 hours.
Yeah, sedentary lifestyle. Yay. I still want my bread.
Still want my bread.
I want my
bread.
4,000 more years. Years and years and years and years. Yeah. I just think it's amazing though that these cooking areas, this is something along the lines of, finding dinosaur footprints. It's amazing to me that these outdoor cooking pits survived this long with evidence of food around and within them. That the fact that it lasted, it persisted through rainstorms, and I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. And also, thankfully, it wasn't, like this didn't occur in Manhattan. So it's not like, 20 feet underneath the sewer system.
If it was in Manhattan, it would have been a bagel. So.
Fire.
Because of the ancient ancestral home of the Jews. A lot of people think it was around Israel. In fact, no. It started in Manhattan and then branched out.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
But come on.
All right.
Come on. But we know it would not have been in Manhattan. It would have been in Brooklyn.
It would have been Brooklyn. You're right.
Okay. Well, when in Brooklyn, I think it is time for something like Blair's Animal Corner.
With Blair.
She loves our creatures, great and small. Biped, millipede, no pet at all. If you want to hear about animals, she's your girl. Except for giant pandas and squirrels.
What you got, Blair?
Do you remember a few weeks ago when I talked about ballooning spiders?
I do. And I was like, why are you bringing the same story again?
Not the same story.
Oh.
It's so good. So a few weeks ago, we talked about ballooning spiders and how they could read the weather and decide when it was good to take off and when it was not. Well, the plot thickens. Recent study from yes, like tapioca. A recent study from the University of Bristol found that, especially leading back to studies on ballooning spiders from Charles Darwin all the way back then, they saw accounts of spiders ballooning in very particular circumstances. So this was when, for example, there was no wind. How do you balloon if there is no wind? When skies are overcast or even in rainy conditions. So how do spiders take off with low or no aerodynamic drag?
They get a running start.
Good guess.
They're just so lightweight. I mean, it could just be like the wing flap of a butterfly.
There you go.
Right.
Well, these researchers looked at how many spiders balloon, and they do it using multiple strands of silk, which we talked about before, that splay out in a fan-like shape, which suggests, in fact, that there may be a repelling electrostatic force involved between them. So,
what?
Yes. So, looking at this a little closer in a laboratory environment, they wanted to manipulate atmospheric potential gradient, APG, which is this global electric circuit always around in the atmosphere. This is something that you'll see, for example, in a thunderstorm when you get lightning, right? So they know, for example, that bumblebees can detect E fields between themselves and flowers, and honeybees can use them to communicate with their hive. And they know that spider silk is an effective electric insulator. So putting those things together, might spiders be responding to E fields like bees? So in the lab, they would switch the E field on and off. And when they did this, as the spider was ballooning, it would cause the spider to move up when it was on and down when it was off, proving that spiders can become airborne without wind when there is an electric field present.
That's cool.
Yes.
That's amazing. Yeah. So, yeah, laboratory experiments. This is where they come in handy.
Yeah, and so their next step is now going to be looking to see whether other animals can detect and use electric fields in ballooning. They also want to see if they can look at the particular physical properties of ballooning silk and carry out their own ballooning studies in the field. So if they can harness this technology.
So really, it's electrostatic forces in the air and also electrostatic forces of the spider filaments themselves. The web.
Yes, which it would explain the kind of the fan shape that they do with the different pieces.
So in a sense, it's a bit self-propelled.
Yes.
And then can we add this also to your story from a couple weeks ago about the directionality of the spiders in the way that they stand? They have a particular stance.
Yes. So this is a good point. So they might be able to position themselves and pick the right time with the right E-fields in order to do this just right. So if they're sensing it, they could be consciously doing it, they could be unconsciously doing it, but they are definitely using the E-fields in the atmosphere alongside the positioning of their silk strands, it looks like, to balloon.
That's
wow. So okay, so they're positioning the silk strands. They are using the electrostatic field. They are detecting it on the little hairs on their legs and using that to their benefit.
Yes.
Nothing to do with wind.
Well, wind also works, right? It's not that wind was ruled out.
Wind can also help. However, in these accounts that they combed through before they started this study, they found that high wind does not usually lend itself to ballooning.
Huh.
So, yeah.
Amazing. This is spiders. Oh, good gracious. You get more and more complicated and interesting all the time.
Yeah. Flying spiders, terrifying, also fascinating.
Also fascinating. Yes. Those things that terrify us also should fascinate us.
Yes. And then I have a story that's slightly in the animal corner and slightly in the social sciences corner, let's call it, all about the sunk cost fallacy. Are you familiar? This is, for example, when you pick a line in the grocery store and it's just taking forever and you go, oh no, I picked the slower checker. Oh no, that person's trying to use coupons. Oh, that other line, it's moving a lot faster. Oh, but I've spent too long here. I just got to stick it out. I'm almost to the front. That's the sunk cost fallacy. Even though we know that other option is better, if we have invested time or resources into something that's not working, we will stick it out.
Oh, so like marriage.
Exactly. So time, effort, money, emotional support, who knows? So all of those things, unhealthy relationships, expensive, wasteful projects, long lines, all those things can be an example of the sunk cost fallacy. New research from University of Minnesota tells us that we are not the only species that have this defect. So mice, rats, and humans all share the sunk cost fallacy. Mice and rats in this experiment spent time from a limited time budget, they only had an hour, foraging for flavored food pieces, while humans spent a limited time budget foraging for what these humans in a University of Minnesota experiment seek, which is entertaining internet videos. Rats and mice in these mazes found there were 4 different restaurants or food delivery locations, and in each restaurant there would be kind of a vestibule where they would get a tone that they were previously trained to indicate the amount of time until food would be delivered, which could be from 1 to 30 seconds. So this is an intensive training ahead of time to teach them what these tones meant. But once they were established, they knew going into the restaurant, okay, this is going to take 1 second, 5 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Then they had to either enter the restaurant from the vestibule or leave and go find something else. Asks them to ask themselves, as a mouse or a rat, am I willing to spend 20 seconds from my limited time budget of an hour waiting for my cherry flavored food pellet? Similarly, humans in a different experiment associated saw a series of web galleries. When they would click on a video, there would be a download bar that indicated a time you'd have to wait before you could watch the video. This meant humans similarly had to answer the question, am I willing to spend 20 seconds from my limited time budget waiting for my kitten video? In this way, each species in these experiments had to show their subjective preferences for individual food flavors or video galleries and decide whether things were worth the wait. They found that, now this is weird because there are two decisions, right? So the first decision is they find out what the delay is, right? Then once they've made the decision either to enter the restaurant or not, or to click on the video or not. Then they have to decide to stick it out, even though it's taking a long time, or to bail. And so this is a two-part decision that each of these individuals had to make in these experiments. And they found that all three species, mice, rats, and humans, were more reluctant to quit the longer they waited. The sunk cost fallacy. They hesitated before accepting or rejecting offers during the initial decision-making before the countdown, which also shows they didn't want to, quote unquote, get in line until they were sure. So there was this very delayed decision-making process before they decided to wait or not. Even more surprising, neither mice, rats, nor humans took into account the time deliberating as part of their sunk cost, which tells researchers in this case, and this might be kind of a leap, admittedly, that these two processes of deliberation are completely different. And therefore, that the reward centers and the impacts on these decision-making processes should be completely different, which is the human impact of all of this study. They're pretty large leap here. Is based on other publications looking at drugs and the changes to neural circuits. They have shown that these two different systems that they're identifying would be affected differently. So you can treat addiction differently depending on what kind of reward center and what decision-making processes are affected by different drugs, which is interesting.
Right. So there's the question of, the deliberation of the neural system that's involved in, am I going to take the cocaine? And the deliberation of the system after that on, well, it's taking a while for me to get it. And for this to happen, am I still going to do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing that I think is really interesting about this is they weren't dishonest about the wait time for these things, as far as I could tell. So I think that's where this gets really interesting, is if I tell you something's going to wait 20 seconds and you've been waiting 35, do you give up or do you stay?
Oh, it's got to be close, right? I mean, it's already overdue. Now it's any second, every second.
Right. So at what point do you give? I think that would be fascinating.
Yeah.
And
I do want to point out that I've got nothing against marriage. I just understand there's a lot of waiting that happens when the day-to-day monogamy
sets in. Picture Justin's in front of a brick wall and he has like an oversized collared shirt with big shoulder pads. He's just like a 1980s comedian talking about marriage. What's up with that?
How am I Andrew Dice Clay? What is this?
It's like next thing we know, he's going to be talking about airplane food. Anyway.
What is it?
But yes, so
people used to say getting there is half the fun, and then they invented the airlines.
There you go. See, he's got it queued up already. But speaking of getting there being half the fun, I certainly have experienced this a lot, where I'll get in the wrong line and I'll go, oh God, no, I've waited here too long. Or you get in the wrong line. I was just going through multiple airports last week, and you get in the wrong line at TSA. You're like, no, I should just, my plane's boarding right now. No, I should just stay. And it's interesting that you can identify exactly where this is happening in the brain and kind of the fact that there are these different stages of the decision-making process and that it goes way back in evolutionary history. It's very interesting.
I am the worst at this, and I'm the worst at picking lanes ahead of time. I always forget to like size up, because that's what you're doing, like a judging thing when you're supposed to size up the people who are in the lines already and go, that one's gonna grab a checkbook and coupons for sure.
Yeah,
but they've only got 4 items versus that person has an entire basket full of stuff, but their checker looks pretty with it, like they're moving.
Yeah,
so we're thinking.
I always pick the wrong one, and then I'm just like, it's no good. If I switch, all the dynamics will change, and the line I was in will move, and I'll be stuck again.
Yeah.
Yep. It's always the wrong choice. But I mean, we're thinking about this in very, anthropomorphic human terms. We're talking, the restaurant situation, the idea of TSA lines or restaurant or grocery store checkout lines, whatever they are. These are very human situations. And so what would the situations be that would have led to this this dual neural system working together on these kinds of decisions in the natural habitats, ecosystems of mice, rats, and probably even earlier. Yeah, like we're going back in evolutionary time. The reason they're looking at mice and rats and humans and comparing is that here we're looking at mammals that are distantly related to humans, right?
Yeah. So maybe an animal
observed
waiting for the toucan to accidentally drop some fruit on the floor.
Well, I like this question, but at least with humans, the first thing I thought of is because for the longest time we were pursuit predators, right? We'd run and sweat, and then we'd let the other creature we were chasing overheat. And it was probably true in a lot of Animal Kingdom. Once you're this close to the prey, you've probably put you expended a lot of energy getting this far. So there's not a whole, you've invested your energy in this pursuit. You stick with it. You can't start it over again. At least with humans, that would make a lot of sense. I don't know that mice do pursuit.
Yeah, for mice or rats who are scavengers or who are gatherers of a sort.
Maybe they smell some food underground and they're digging and digging and digging and digging.
When do you give up digging? Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe you're a dog at home and your owner is eating chips. And you're like, oh, he's going to drop one. I just know it. He's going to drop one. Oh, not yet. No. He's going to drop. Oh. She started eating over there. Should I give up and go over to her? Should I wait here?
Oh, you know what? I just realized I want to know how to manipulate this system so I can get my cats to wait longer in the morning before they decide to start trying to wake me up to get breakfast. Because there's the decision going on to wake up the owner, wake up the food giver, wake up the food giver. No, not yet. Not yet.
Do you always feed them in the morning?
Now we do it.
Do you always feed them in the morning?
Yes.
Stop.
Just don't feed your cats anymore. It'll be fine.
Don't ever feed. I'm saying don't feed them in the morning. Like cats get no food till sometime in the afternoon. That would be the thing, right? You just change the pattern there.
Then they'll just start following her around, meowing at her starting at noon.
Oh, feed me. I'm starving. Meow. I'd love to know, everybody, what are your thoughts on these behaviors and the different things the different influences evolutionarily that might have influenced this kind of development? This is interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks for this, Blair. I think it's time for us to take a break, though.
Yeah.
You guys ready? Yeah, we're going to take a quick break. This is This Week in Science. Wilha cannot speak anymore. We're going to be back with a poem and some poo and all sorts of science.
Poo.
Yeah, second half of the show is going to be exciting. I hope that you will stick with us. We'll be right back with more This Week in Science.
Can't explain things you've heard. exploration. A lot of research shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need.
Oh, patience. I always need lots of patience. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us for This Week in Science tonight. It is wonderful to have you with us, enjoying the science along with us. And we hope that you continue to do so. And if you have the means, that you help us continue to bring you the show every week, or mostly every week, except for the occasional vacation that we take very rarely, but that you help continue to make TWIS a reality, because it really is because of you and your assistance that we are able to make this show happen. So, how can you help us out? Well, first thing you can do is subscribe to This Week in Science if you have not done so already. You can head right over to TWIS.org, click on the orange subscribe button, which will take you to either YouTube, iTunes, or the Google Play podcast portal. You'll be able to subscribe depending on the device and the way that you would like to consume your TWIS. Whether, if you're driving, I hope that you choose the podcast. If you're hanging out at home and you just want to watch it from your couch, well, you're watching from your couch, maybe subscribe to YouTube. That seems like a great thing to do. Oh, and hey, if you can help us out, if you're not subscribed to us on YouTube yet, we're almost to 12,000 subscribers on YouTube. Let's build those numbers up. I mean, we're at like 11,800 something. Come on. Help us get to 12,000. Subscribe to us on YouTube if you are not already. Anyway, that is a major way that you can help This Week in Science out. Additionally, you can help out by supporting us through your purchases. You can click at TWIS.org on the Zazzle store link that's in the main header bar. And there you will find all sorts of gear and goodies, things covered with TWIS logos, with art from Blair's Animal Corner past calendars. Got all sorts of neat things. Somebody recently bought a luggage tag. Thank you for your purchase of a luggage tag. TWIS will travel with you places. I love that. We also have hats, wrapping paper, little baby onesies. Don't you want to see a baby wearing a Blair's Animal Corner T-Rex art? Could be pretty awesome. All of the proceeds from the purchases at Zazzle.com. They do a portion of the proceeds go to support This Week in Science. So please, if you would like a thing with the TWIS aspect to it, this is where you get it, at Zazzle.com/thisweekinscience, or just go to TWIS.org, click on that Zazzle store link. Also, you can directly donate. You can click on the yellow donate button that's on the sidebar. It'll take you through a PayPal interface to donate any amount of your choosing. You can also click on the most recent episode, scroll through the show notes, lots of links there telling you more about the stories that we reported on. At the bottom of those pages, pink buttons where you can set up recurring payments through PayPal that will take a set amount every month. So it's set it and forget it, and you will be supporting us in a continuing fashion through PayPal. However, if PayPal is not your bag, well, we've got this wonderful community over on Patreon. So click on that Patreon link that is at TWIS.org in the main header bar, and you'll head over to patreon.com. Patreon.com/thisweekinscience. You can choose the level of your support. There are various tiers you can join at, and there are nice little premiums that you get. One of the main ones at, I believe, the $10 a month. These are all once a month charges. So $1 a month, $2 a month, $10 a month. We will say thank you to you. We'll read your name at the end of the show if you would like us to. And we will just verbally thank you every week when we do the show. And that is a big, big thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. All of you who already support us on Patreon. But if you're not, maybe consider it. Patreon's a cool community. I make little video posts occasionally, and there are lots of ways that I interact with all of you through Patreon every week. And I hope that you check it out if you haven't before. Back to TWIS.org. That's the main portal where you can find links to all of these things. And I just would like to say, I hope you consider, in addition to subscribing to TWIS and listening to us or watching us every week, actually helping to support making this podcast a reality every week. We couldn't do this without you. Thank you so much for your support.
Can't explain things you've heard with more than intuition. A lot of reason shows the way to go. New conclusion. The methods of hypothesis and patience are the only things I need. Put on a pair of goggles and go looking for the things I couldn't see.
And we are back with more This Week in Science.
We are back. Oh, and what do I have next? What do I have next for everyone? Science? Yes, we've got more science. But first, before we dive into that, it is our favorite segment of the show, This Week in What Has Science Done For Me Lately? This week we have a poem. We have This Week in What Has Science Done For Me Lately in the form of a poem from Travis Alexander LaRue, a science poem. What brings forth our lights in the darkest night? What gives microscopic sight and man flight? How do we cure a disease we can't see, or break away free from Earth's gravity? Through trials and hardship, we test and we test, all for the sake of mankind's progress. Thanks be to science for all that you offer, from vaccines to planes, and of course, the dishwasher.
Yes. Greatest invention of all time.
Absolutely. I know. Travis, thank you so much for your creativity and sharing this wonderful poem with us. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I will try reading it again at some point. No, I'm not going to read it again. I'm sorry for breaking the flow in there. I do try my best. But Travis was excited he thought that Justin, yes, you would appreciate the last line of the poem, especially.
Do you know that the average dishwasher in a home saves 5,000 gallons of water a year over hand washing dishes? Not to mention reduced energy costs.
Did you used to sell those?
No, actually, I didn't. I did refrigerators, washers, and dryers, but never dishwashers.
Never dishwashers, huh?
No,
Go figure.
No.
That's why he still loves them.
Yeah. I know. It's because I lived for so long without one. That it's always been.
It's novel. No, for me too. It's very novel to me. I grew up without a dishwasher too. Yeah.
I also grew up without a dishwasher, and it has been one of the things when renting a house or an apartment, one of the things as an adult I have always looked at. It must have a dishwasher.
Yes.
The best time-saving appliance of all time. Yes. Travis, thank you so much, because these ideas that you've brought forth in your poem are absolutely true. Mankind's progress. Let's keep testing for it. And everyone, remember, we need you to write in with your stories of what science has done for you lately. Yes, it can be a poem, a sonnet, a haiku. It can be a story. It can be a quick little note. Whatever it might be, we'd love your stories. I love reading them. Leave us a message on our Facebook page, facebook.com/thisweekinscience, or email me directly at Kirsten, KIRSTEN, @thisweekinscience.com. We're going to keep filling this segment with all of your stories and fun. We love the science. Help us do it. And now, Justin, more science.
More science. Have you ever seen an anglerfish?
Yes.
Yes.
I bought an anglerfish hat this week.
You're kidding me.
Did
Do you have it
not.
handy?
No, it's at work.
Oh no. Okay, so this is that spiky toothed deep sea monster with the bioluminescent light bulb at the end of the fleshy unicorn tentacle. Everybody with me? Lives most of its life in total darkness, more than a kilometer below the ocean's surface. And for those still not familiar with the metric system, a kilometer is approximately the same as 1,000 meters. So that's really, really deep down under. It is the female anglerfish that sports the glowing lure on top of their foreheads, where bioluminescence is emitted by bacteria. And it's used to attract prey as well as potential mates. So for the first time, scientists have sequenced and analyzed the genomes of the bacteria that live in the anglerfish's, the little bulb at the end of that tentacly thing. These were collected from angler specimens in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's reported in the journal MBio. The analysis revealed that the bacteria have lost some of the genes that are needed to live freely in the water. It's because the fish and the bacteria developed this mutually beneficial relationship where the bacteria put on their disco light fandango while the fish supplies nutrients in the bulb that the microbes live on. Particularly interesting, this is quotey voice of Troy Hendry, assistant professor of microbiology, Cornell University, paper's lead author. What's particularly interesting about the specific example is that we see evidence that this evolution is still underway, even though the fish themselves evolved about 100 million years ago. That bacteria are still losing genes. It's unclear why. Most of the known symbiotic relationships between organisms and bacteria are between like a host and free-living bacteria that don't necessarily evolve this level of a symbiosis or any symbiosis. So they can live outside of the host. They can live inside of the host. They can be happy in multiple regions. And then there's intercellular bacteria that live inside the host cells. And these undergo huge reductions to a very simplified genome through evolution. But the bacteria inside the bulb in the anglerfish represents a sort of in-between state. Preliminary data suggests these bacteria may move from the anglerfish bulb still into the water. It's a new paradigm in our understanding of symbiosis in general. This is a third type of situation where the bacteria are not actually stuck with their host, but they are undergoing evolution, Henry says. So the genetic sequencing showed that the genomes of the anglerfish bioluminescent bacteria are 50% reduced compared to their nearest free-swimming relatives. So they've lost about half. Bacteria have lost most of the genes that are associated with making amino acids and breaking down nutrients other than glucose, suggesting that it's very likely that the bulb inside is supplying these nutrients and amino acids via the fish. Same time, the bacteria have retained some genes that are useful in water outside of the host still. They still have pathways to make flagellum, little tails, so they can sort of motor their way about in the water. They lost most of the genes involved in sensing chemical cues in the environment that would normally lead that little flagella microbe to find food or other nutrients, although some still remain. There's a subset of chemicals that they can still respond to. And Hendry says these were pared down to something they cared about, which is provided by their fishy friends. Very interesting. If you look at an anglerfish, it's a very primordial looking with those spiky, really, really fangy looking teeth. For a microbe to look upon that fish as its nutrient giver, right? This is the source of all life now for this bioluminescent bacteria. And that fish, in terms of just the fish that you would normally, even run into, you might not think that this is something that's such a center of a universe for any life form, but it is. It's such a cool symbiosis too. And I was sort of thinking, like, evolutionarily, like, what if the microbes, what if this bacteria pared down those genes that created bioluminescence? Well, pretty quickly, whatever anglerfish had that in a bulb would probably not live long enough, wouldn't be able to eat or attract a mate. And so that would sort of naturally select that out of the gene pool pretty quick, right?
Yeah, you would think so, because that's the benefit to the anglerfish.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting question how far the symbiosis has gone. I mean, would the bacteria continue to inhabit that space? I mean, why did they go there in the first place? You know, the anglerfish is giving them something, it attracts them there somehow, but once the bacteria are there, they don't have to do any of that anymore, so they're losing all of their
bacteria,
genes.
come here, I want to catch
question,
something.
and that's not addressed. I don't know if they're currently attracting them there.
Right.
This is one of those things, like, they could be born.
I would assume the anglerfish was following the bacteria, right? The bacteria was free swimming, attracting fish.
100 million years ago, or somewhere.
And the anglerfish was following the bacteria because there was food there. What happened next? I don't know.
It could be like, okay, the food I like is attracted to this bioluminescence. I'm going to go hang out there a lot.
Yeah.
Lots of close contact with the bioluminescence.
Maybe you eat a few accidentally while you're eating fish.
And you happen to have a fleshy unicorn tentacle. That's the part that's like
a nice place for the bacteria to live.
Yeah, it is. But the formation of this thing, like,
there's an apartment above the garage. I don't know. You could get to a certain point, say, okay, they accidentally ate some, it got stuck in their teeth, and then their teeth were lighting up. That was attracting fish. It was how, this give and take continued over many, many years. But then, yes, how does the bulb above the head happen?
Right. And it's not addressed here too, but these two are two life forms that have absolutely influenced each other's evolution.
Absolutely.
The anglerfish survival is increased by having this bioluminescence. It's become an absolutely necessary trait over time, but it was at some point just a distinct advantage that it gained. And then the bacteria have a nice little home deep under the sea, and nutrients are now being provided. Like, they've crafted each other's genomic existence over time.
Yeah, and they would not exist one without the other.
Like in this form, right?
Yeah. They would be different. We would not have a thing called anglerfish. We would not have these bacteria in this particular form. They absolutely influenced each other and depend on each other. They made each other.
It kind of makes me wonder too, like, which is just, again, not the scope of anything that's contained within this study, but are the bioluminescents that are free floating? What are they? Are these relatives that haven't paired down, that aren't living in the bulb, right? What's the evolutionary divergence?
Yeah, yep.
Right, and are they actually like, this was the freestanding version of the bioluminescence before they got adapted by anglerfish, or are these escapees?
Okay, so let me elucidate.
Right?
Let me elucidate a little bit of this. So anglerfish are in the larger family called goosefish. Goosefish are not only found in the deep sea, they're also found in muddy river bottoms. And they all, for the most part, have these things going on, but they are not always bioluminescent. They are sometimes just the only thing poking out. Goosefish have amazing camouflage when they're in lighted habitats. And so it's just this thing floating around. Maybe they think it's an eel. Maybe they think it's a piece of seaweed. A fish goes for it. They get to eat them. So this already exists.
The lure behavior of the worm-like appendage may have been the thing that it was using for the longest time already.
Yes.
And then became a more useful or a different, same tactic. Really, it's still a lure, same tactic.
Yes.
But wow, Yeah, so that makes it much more intriguing then too, because
Mhm.
then did it intentionally? Can we say this? Pick up the bioluminescence that already existed, or did the bioluminescence
No,
form?
I mean, yeah, I would think there
Ooh.
would be some kind of, there's definitely a survival advantage as you go deeper and deeper where it's really dark to having the bioluminescence
Yeah.
to capturing food
Mhm.
because bioluminescence indicates some kind of food source in the deep.
Mhm.
So one to the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is fascinating. Fascinating. So many questions. Oh, anglerfish. So many questions. Well, now it is time to talk about poo in a roundabout way.
Yes. Don't be roundabout about it. I want to hear all about poo.
You're going to hear all about it. Well, in a study of children who have autism spectrum disorders and looking at the concomitant, often gastrointestinal problems that follow along with that, researchers used fecal transplants for 18 children and teenagers with autism, and then look to see what happened after 2 months. And it all seemed kinda like, "Oh, they've got better digestion, things seem to be diarrhea's reduced, gastrointestinal problems seem to be getting better." And autism symptoms seem to be improving as well, but 2 months really isn't long enough to see if there's been a lot of improvement. So, the team did a 2-year follow-up that was just published, or actually has been announced at the Beneficial Microbes Conference. Kinda wanna go to that conference. Um, the Beneficial Microbes Conference, and the researcher in charge, Rosa Krajmalnik-Brown from Arizona State University in Tempe, reported that children kept many of the beneficial bacteria that were in the fecal transplant samples that were gained during the treatment. And the diversity of bacteria in their guts was larger. It was increased after the 2 years. It increased more than it had even during those first 2 months of follow-up after the therapy. Um, some of the kids' stomach troubles did get a little bit worse according to the report, but on average, scores were still more than 60% better than before they received the transplants. Additionally, the kids' autism symptoms seemed to improve over the 2-year period as well. So now, sample size 18 individuals,
Mhm.
7 to 17 years old, fairly wide age range. Autism symptoms do sometimes improve with therapy, with
Mhm.
other interventions, with age, even. And it depends on the intensity of the symptoms, how far along the spectrum a patient is, as to how things change. But the question is, all right, fecal transplants. Number one, people have been supposing this link between gut and autism symptoms for a very long time, and this kind of shows maybe there's a link there that needs to be investigated further.
Yeah,
Uh,
but the other thing, though, I think, okay. So one of the things that we do know is like mood can be affected by
Yeah.
your gut bacteria, right?
Mhm.
And if you've reduced these gastrointestinal issues, you have less stress on the human in the first place. So it could be that being in a better mood or having less stress also is what can reduce these symptoms. Doesn't
Great.
mean that it's
Yep.
not reducing symptoms. It just
Right.
means that there could be a pretty straightforward mechanism behind why the symptoms aren't as acute as they were when you have somebody who's got a better mood and a better physical or better physiology. What would you? How do you say it?
Mhm.
When your tummy doesn't feel all messed
Yeah,
up.
when I have a bad
Mm.
tummy, I get cranky.
Yeah.
I
But
get so cranky. Yeah.
the other thing I was wondering was this a double-blind study? Was this controlled? Do we
No,
know?
they had autism.
No,
But
yeah, this was not double blind.
I just
is
wonder because also this is the age at which a lot of children with autism are diagnosed and at which they learn about their own condition. And if you tell them that they are being given something that might help their condition, there is a chance that they might exhibit less stereotypical behavior to that condition.
That's true, but and so you would think that that would play out during the 2 months after the treatment, but
Mhm.
2 years later, that's
Mhm.
not necessarily
Yeah.
going to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, so that kind of an influence isn't necessarily
Yeah.
the thing. Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
I
yeah,
think
but it
Justin's point
was
is
not a
for the-
double-blind
for
trial.
the-
This
for
is
the
a
blind trial,
very
though, I
small
think what you
sample.
would-
It's a pilot, basically.
Right.
Mhm.
I think what you would want to do is just basically do this on individuals who don't have autism. Right?
Right.
Like, because I think you may see like an improved self-reporting of mood and
comprehension, focus,
exactly.
communication.
You'll probably see a lot of that come along with it.
Yeah.
Would be the guess.
Yeah.
Let somebody go out and prove it.
Yeah. So yes. I mean, basically what we're all saying is this is interesting, but there is a lot more study that needs to be done. This is like, I love your point, Justin, that it's, this is probably a link in the chain.
Which
of
basically
behavior.
just means poo pills for everyone.
That's
Dr.
right.
Justin's not a real doctor. Poo pills.
Everyone could benefit.
All that ails you. Yeah, well, I mean, this is I think one of those good examples of not being afraid though of correlatives, right? The correlatives are signals that there could be mechanisms, and that's why you pursue the correlatives. You don't announce, "Aha, we have figured it out." Because if you pull a lever over there, a window opens over here. That's not quite it yet. You have to find the mechanism between them that's causing this to happen.
Right. But also, in the meantime, if you don't know the mechanism, but you know after a larger study that this still helps, it's not a bad way to go in the meantime.
I think the take home message at this point in relation to autism and fecal transplants is this is a very preliminary study, even though it was over 2 years at this point. And so don't run out to get
your
fecal
poop pills.
Yeah, no. I mean, even though we're saying poop pills for everyone, it's that's not really what people should be doing yet because the data is not all in.
I think as long as they get them from the right source, and again, Dr. Justin is not a real doctor, but still, you should probably listen to him because he sounds authoritative on the radio.
I think soon it will be poo pills for everyone. We just don't know which one for whom yet.
Exactly. Which for whom? And Justin, do you have another story?
Oh, is it that time again where I bring another story? Let's see.
It is. It's your turn.
Okay, so history of civilization has shown secular societies tend to be wealthier than heavily religious societies. But the question is, what kind of comes first? Does the increase in wealth lead people to become less reliant on religion? Or does separating the state's ideology from the ideology of the religion lead to greater prosperity? And apparently, even though I wasn't aware of this, and you may not have also been aware of this, this has been a big debate that's been going on for a really long time about how these things that people notice when they go back and look throughout history and analyze societies and cultures, which one is really coming first has been a big debate. So this is new research measuring the importance of religion in 109 countries during the 20th century. So the 20th century would span from 1900-ish to 2000. So this study is published in Science Advances and has shown that a decline in religion does indeed influence the country's future economic prosperity. Researchers from University of Bristol, UK, and University of Tennessee, that's here in the United States, used data from from the 20th century. The findings revealed that secularization precedes economic developments and not the other way around. Also, this does not demonstrate a causal pathway, so they're not explaining exactly the mechanism here. This is correlative again, but it does rule out the reverse, that it's the economic improvements happen and then the decline in religiosity would take place.
Religiosity. That's a technical term.
It's a totally technical term. But here's the other part of this. It's also pretty interesting. The findings also show that secularization only predicts future economic development when it is accompanied by respect and tolerance for individual rights. So countries where abortion, divorce, and homosexuality, as well as women's rights, are tolerated or made as rights, have a greater chance of future economic prosperity. And that, as much as the secularization, seem to be the roadmap to increased economic success of a society. Damien Rock Studies lead researcher, University of Bristol Medical School, says, our findings show that secularization precedes economic development, not the other way around. However, we suspect that the relationship is not directly causal. We notice that secularization only leads to economic development. It was accompanied with this greater respect for individual rights. So,
I think it's fascinating. I mean, the first thing that jumps to mind is that these views around various aspects of personal rights, abortion, divorce, homosexuality, these things being tolerated in these societies. I mean, what it hints at is less fear and potentially a more exploratory, possibly creative economy as a result. Because if you're not tightening everything down and holding everything in, you're allowing growth. And by allowing growth, then the economy can grow.
And one of the things, though, that I think it may have been largely a broad view that they're taking on these things. But it seems to me that if you just started with women's rights, from which things like abortion rights will also flow, a less patriarchal society, you seem to get these benefits, and pretty quickly. I don't necessarily, as much as my atheistic underpinnings would like me to say, see, secularization, that's the way, monorail, right? Like, yeah. I think just if even if it was a very religious society, I think that making that religion conform to giving women an equal say in everything and equal education and everything, you probably have the same results, regardless of what the religion is, right? I don't quite buy the premise as much as I would love it to be the thing. I kind of don't buy it.
Well, if you think about it just on a very basic level, if you're not allowing divorce, you can't allow second marriages. If you're not allowing gay marriage, all this kind of stuff, people will leave to do those things other places, which means they take their money for marriage elsewhere. They take their money for education if you're a female and you can't get that where you are elsewhere. So, and then
or they don't leave and are just repressed or murdered.
Right.
They just have a self-destructive society.
Well, and that's what I was going to say too, is that when you legalize abortion, emergency room visits go down, medical emergencies go down, all these sorts of things that do impact an economy negatively as well.
But I think from the big point here also is that they are ruling out economic growth as the cause of secularization. So it's not that the economy is growing, that it's going to become secular. that's not a direct path that way, and that there is a different kind of interplay between secularization and economic growth.
But it also means that, outlawing abortion or creating a more religious society, it could be detrimental to your economy.
Quite apropos.
Taking away rights from women is going to be detrimental to your economy.
Yeah.
So if you're all for a good economy, maybe make these
just do what you want to do, as long as you're not stopping other people doing from what they need to be able to do. Just respect each other. Let everybody be their own kind of master. It's fine. And everyone will benefit.
But it's not saying religion is bad. It's that there's this secularization, which is like, as it is, a tolerance of multiple views.
Yes, exactly.
So religion can still persist within the society. It doesn't mean that the society becomes atheistic. It's just that overall the development of the society is allowing more things to take place.
But again, I think I would also then pin back your pinning back of the thing and say, also, it's probably because religious societies tend to be extremely misogynistic. like that, which also says all the things that you just said. But that's,
I think let's give everybody equal rights. And there we go. Science.
I would say that moving forward, we will find that religions that can persist in a modern day world will not force beliefs on others who do not share them, which is really what this is about, right?
Well, I think I don't know if it means that, but I think that if they include their women in equal decision making about forcing other people to believe what they believe, that they'll also have greater economic ability. Like, this is my point.
Yeah.
Like, I don't actually buy the necessarily, because the religious ideologies versus and any kind of political ideologies, they can just be equally as baseless at times. The point is, I think, though, whether or not the women have a voice in that is going to be an improvement to their society, because decisions like divorce and abortion and these sort of things will likely be better represented in those societies as well.
Yeah. Well, I am glad. I like it when science tips into society and what makes society tick. It's always an interesting line to cross and to discover more about.
I don't know that it's crossing a line.
I didn't say not crossing a line. I want to move on with the show, but I just want to say, I think
we're getting political.
I want to move on with the show.
Next time I do one of these stories, I'm like, scientists looked at the behavior of human beings, a form of hairless ape that has for generations been evolving a larger brain structure. I'll just do it completely anthropologically, and then we'll be fine.
Perfect. There we go. I want to see you do it, Justin.
Yeah,
yes, please. All right,
you know what they look like. They're all fleshy all over.
This idea of yours, it's a diamond in the rough. It's a diamond in the rough. Ha! Just like a quadrillion tons of diamond that are hidden in the inside of our planet.
What? I'm getting a pitchfork. I'm going. Wait, not a pitchfork, a pickaxe. What?
1 quadrillion tons. 10 to the 16.
I bet there's not that much zirconium in the world, huh? Doesn't seem so bad now, does it? Yeah, now it seems like a really special ring you've got. Yeah.
That's right. It's a special diamond ring. That's right. Yeah. So Ulrich Fall, who's a research scientist involved in this from MIT's Department of Earth, Atmospheric and Planetary Sciences, says this shows that diamond is not perhaps the exotic mineral, but on the geological scale of things, it's relatively common. We can't get at them, but still there's much more diamond there than we have ever thought before. So where is there and how did they discover this? So researchers have been looking at an anomaly in seismic data. So USGS, other agencies keep records of seismic activity, and the seismic activity that they record is sound waves, right? Produces sound waves that travel through the earth. It's like the earth being rung like a bell and those sound waves passing through various things. And in the laboratory, they've taken different minerals and materials and looked at how sound waves travel through those materials. And so they've been able to create models of the interior of the earth that basically it's like, dong, ring the earth like a bell. We can figure out what is going on inside, beyond the crust, in the mantle, in the core of our planet. So they've been looking at these seismic recordings, and they have seen an anomaly, that there is this relationship between seismic velocity and rock composition in the crust in the upper mantle, which is also known as the lithosphere. And what they've seen is sound waves seem to speed up when they are passing through the roots, the bottommost parts of these portions of rock that are called cratons or cratons. And these are colder and they're less dense than the rest of the mantle around them. And they're like basically like the roots of our teeth that go into our jaw and hold our teeth there. Well, these cratons are like the roots of mountains, and they stretch deep into the crust and into the mantle itself. It's like the roots that hold the mountains in place on the surface of the earth. And so it's like these have to have special properties, and they differ from the mantle itself, but they've been seeing the sound waves don't travel the way that the models suggest they should. And so they're like, all right, something's going on here. Let's go look at it again in the laboratory. And pretty much they came up with that rock has to have 1 to 2% diamond, some peridite and eclogite and some other minerals. But the 1 to 2% diamond in the rock means that there's about 1,000 times more diamond in the rocks than we ever estimated before.
A lot of diamonds.
It's a lot of diamonds. Yeah.
And so the research. I feel like there's like some UFO hovering about. Like, did you hear? Earth's full of diamonds.
We're full of diamonds.
We just went there and like we're practicing out with the new laser pointers on some cows, but they got full of diamonds. Let's go get it. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're full of diamonds. Right on.
We're full of diamonds. Yeah. So the researcher says they are like these cratons. I'm going back and forth between craton and craton. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce the word, but they are like pieces of wood floating on water. They're tiny bit less dense than their surroundings, so they don't get subducted back into the earth, and they float on the surface. And so they preserve the oldest rocks in the world. And they found that you just need 1 to 2% diamond for these cratons to be stable and not sink. And so when we do find really old rocks, really old rocks, it's kind of rock called kimberlite. It's named after an area in Kimberley, South Africa, where diamonds were first found in this kind of rock. And these kimberlite pipes have been found at the edges of these cratonic roots. And so it kind of makes sense that the cratonic roots have some diamond in them. However, it's a lot more than we ever thought. Lots of diamonds. Diamonds! Our Earth's best friend.
So now I should be able to go to the store and buy diamonds for real cheap, right? They've been devalued.
No, not really, because we can't get at them. They're little tiny diamond inclusions in larger mineral deposits. Yeah. Sorry. No. Yeah, Blair, you got a story about koala tongues?
Oh my goodness, do I ever? What do koalas eat?
Bamboo?
Eucalyptus.
All right, pandas eat bamboo. I don't know what I was thinking. Eucalyptus, wrong area of the world.
It's a similarly specialized system. Koalas have very specific bacteria in their gut that help them digest this otherwise toxic plant. And the koala genome has officially been sequenced. So 54 scientists at 29 institutions successfully sequenced the entirety of the koala genome. They are one of the first marsupials to be studied. I think they're the fourth ever that's been sequenced. And they wanted to look at all sorts of things, but this particular study coming out of Kyoto University wanted to look at koalas' taste receptor genes. Why is that? In all animals, including humans, bitterness is usually a warning sign of toxicity. Eucalyptus leaves are extremely toxic to most animals, but are not so much to koalas. So how do they know? Well, it would make sense maybe if they didn't have any bitterness sensors at all, because they're eating the bitterest of the bitter all day, every day. But it turned out, in fact, that looking at their genome, they found koalas have more bitter taste receptors than any other Australian marsupial and more than most mammals.
Actually, you got to be able to distinguish between the bitters.
Bingo! This enables the animals to detect toxic metabolites in the eucalyptus so they can discriminate toxicity levels as they ingest. So knowing from taking care of them for a brief period of time, they eat a lot of different species of eucalyptus. They even have their personal favorites from koala to koala. But when they eat it, they only ever eat the freshest of the yellow-green growth at the tip of the branches. So one wonders if that has the least toxins or the most water in it. They might be able to taste the difference. So this is demonstrating selectivity in the leaves they consume. And so they think that they use their bitterness receptors to avoid as much of the toxic metabolite as possible. What gets especially interesting is that koalas also appear to have sweetness and umami perception, which has not been observed in other animals with highly specialized diets. So if they're eating bitter eucalyptus all day, every day, why can they taste sweetness and umami?
Curious. Yeah, what else is in their diet? What else would be out there that they would be searching for?
Yeah.
I mean, or yes, the bitterness is looking for toxicity in the eucalyptus, but is there a certain sweet component?
Maybe there's a sweetness to this eucalyptus we don't even know about.
It's the minty freshness.
Minty freshness. Yes, it's like a nice sip of tea or one of those very overbearing candles you get as a gift from it on occasion. It's always eucalyptus, I feel like, in it. It's just like, it's so strong.
I love the smell of eucalyptus. Clears the sinuses. It's amazing. It is amazing. So moving on forward. What other stories do we have here? Oh, microbe detection on a chip. A new technology that is out now. It's not a tricorder. It's not magic, but it's published in Nature Biotechnology. Researchers using basically a little biochip that can do a genetic microbial scan in less than 2 hours with no culturing needed of the bacteria. It's just looking at their genes. And when a sample is loaded onto the chip, according to this article from Science Magazine, there are 5 separate chemical procedures that are carried out within this tiny chip to isolate genetic material and screen it against known pathogenic sequences. So they are able to strain for particular genetic mutations that confer, say, antibiotic resistance. And so that it's not precisely identifying the microbes per se, but identifying the traits that the microbes in the sample have. And what this chip could do is easily, within 2 hours, be an easy way for doctors to know whether or not a patient has an antibiotic resistant strain of microbe and which antibiotics they may be able or not be able to use in their treatment regime.
How great.
Yeah.
It's amazing. You say it's not a tricorder. Sounds a little bit like a tricorder.
Maybe this chip could be included in a tricorder.
Yeah. I'm getting
It's small
interesting
enough.
readings, Captain.
There is a slight potential downside to this sort of thing.
Yeah. Such as
the sort of lab on the chip, all diagnosis screening technology. If everyone has it, people are gonna freak out for no reason, right? Because as good as these things are, there's probably still a chance of a false negative, right? And if you have a test that has a false negative, say it's accurate to 99.9% of the time, there's a 0.1% chance you have a false negative, which isn't a problem as long as there's been a whole bunch of filters of, well, you have this sort of symptom and that sort of symptom and these other side symptoms. Now let's give you the test. It could be a pretty accurate instrument. But if everybody's got the ability to administer tests to themselves, suddenly those false negatives of 1 out of 1,000,
much
4
more.
million people take the test, right? 400,000 people have this disease, right? Like, what? No, actually, it's super rare. Only 40 people in the country have it. But now, because everybody's got a lab on a chip at home and everybody took the test and it all has this, only has a 1,000 chance of false negative. Now there's 400,040 people who have been diagnosed with this disease in the United States. Like these tools have to still be in the hands of the professionals.
Nobody said they were giving this tool to anybody but doctors.
No, but this is the dream of what, like the lab on the chip where you've got a thing in your a straw that you breathe into, and like what we've talked about this.
My phone tells me I slept irregularly last night. I must have had something wrong with me. I'm gonna die.
Well, I think the idea is you have your phone or you have your home health monitoring device, and the data is you provide the samples, and the data is then sent to, or the results are sent to your doctor. For interpretation. You don't do the interpretation yourself.
Just stick your tongue into the port.
Medical professional.
No, but your doctor's like, your doctor's like, oh my gosh, they just tested positive for supercalifragilisticus. I've been hearing this all over the place. In fact, I think like 400,000 people in the country have this now, and it's only 40 because there's a 1% chance of a false positive. Let's do
the test again, says the doctor.
You need to have symptoms before you do the test.
That's not always. Sometimes it's just monitoring. I mean, the idea for this is a patient comes in with symptoms. It looks like a bacterial infection. What kind of bacterial infection is it? Can we treat it? With what? What are the genes that this, and this is a medical tool. It would be a medical diagnostic tool for doctors. I understand your statement.
I took it to a different.
You did.
And understanding that a lot of the time, if a doctor knows there's something bad, but they don't know exactly what's going to work on it, sometimes they'll give what I consider a nuke to your system. They'll give you multiple kinds of antibiotics to clear out whatever it is if you're really in a bad spot. But this way they could actually target and be very specific with it. I think it's great.
My final story for this evening has to do with robots. And this is a really grabby robot. Just going to tell you right now, this robot is super grabby, but it's not grabbing people. It's grabbing soft-bodied organisms from the sea.
That's great. Are you talking like blobfish?
Blobfish and octopodes and all sorts of fragile comb jellies, fragile life forms, siphonophores.
Yes.
Yeah, basically life forms that are very fragile and that even suction collection techniques shred them. So there is a lot unknown about many types of sea creatures because their bodies don't have to be super hardy. There are lots of them that are very fragile. And so we haven't really been able to collect them and do monitoring of populations or answer a lot of questions that we have about them. And so researchers at an engineering firm called Cooper Perkins Inc. They have a device that they just tested underwater in Monterey Bay, the underwater canyon off the California coast. They trapped and released jellyfish, squid, and other things up to 700 meters below the surface of the sea, and it kind of is it's being advertised as kind of like a Pokemon style collection device. It's
Oh boy.
this grabby robot catches the deep sea creatures. It goes out and uses multiple flat fingers of a sort to collect the soft-bodied organisms into a ball, kind of like a Poké Ball. So it's got multiple arms, and it's a robot, so it can do automatic collection, and not rely on human reflexes as a piloted remote control robot would. So it's a 12-sided box that closes in a spherical shape, collecting the animals under the sea.
Got a little origami to it there.
It does. Yeah, it does a little in the way that it folds. Absolutely. So there are 3D cameras and sensors and DNA collection tools within this device that would potentially help us learn a lot about the creatures of the deep that we haven't been able to study before. Go robots.
Nice.
Yeah, so this is a good grabby robot. Not a bad
not a grabby robot you have to call HR about.
No, not at all. Not at all. Anyone else have any more stories for the end of the show?
I don't.
You don't, Justin?
Justin?
You don't have enough? You're good?
Oh,
you didn't?
Yeah, it was the one I was going to tack on here at the end, right? This is University of Otago, led an international collaborative research to question a study that was actually done at Stanford University. So this Otago, I think, is New Zealand, and it's bioarchaeologist associate professor Sian Halcrow, who led this study into a very small mummified body. This is the Atacama mummy, also known as Ata, that was found in the desert of Chile. So this is a very tiny 15 centimeter long skeleton that Stanford researchers concluded genetic abnormalities could explain the perceived abnormal characteristics of the skeleton. Ata is also a conspiracy type meme. A believer in aliens think this is a tiny alien mummy it's very ancient, that was found in the desert. So Professor Halcrow and her peers from universities in the United States, Sweden, and Chile highlighted a number of concerns they have about the analysis that was done in this research. So as experts in human anatomy and skeletal development, research team found no evidence for any of the skeletal anomalies reported by the Stanford researchers. All the abnormal characteristics cited by Stanford researchers are part of normal skeletal development of a fetus, which the tiny mummy is. So they say unfortunately, there's no scientific rationale to undertake genomic analysis of Ata because the skeleton is normal. The identified genetic mutations are just coincidental. And none of the genetic mutations are known to be strongly associated with skeletal pathology that will affect the skeleton at this young of an age, the professor said. Furthermore, this mummy may not be like that old. It's probably just in the desert because, as we've been talking about, in Chile, there was a lot of misogynistic, religious-dominated culture. Abortion is illegal, and this is the lengths to which women needing an abortion would have to go out in the middle of the desert to have these procedures performed. So, lack of knowledge about fetal development, lack of knowledge about the political atmosphere in which the sample came from. They're pretty much slamming the researchers from Stanford who put this together, saying sometimes it's good to do a collaborative effort with people outside of your immediate field. It can help sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, don't just use your own field. Collaboration. It does help science get out of the silo.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay
And I
to
did
ask
I
questions. Okay.
I did learn something recently about the area around the Atacama Desert, and that area historically, the peoples who lived there, there's a lot of mummification. So this one quote unquote alien Atacama mummy, there are thousands of other mummified babies and young children, and it's not a one-off find.
But is that
necessarily.
an intentional practice, or is that an affect of leaving a body in a dry
desert?
Like,
Yeah,
I
possibly.
don't know that this is. It's like, hey, look, all of our dead that we left to go, we're gonna go have a viewing, but now we have a mummy.
Yeah, interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Interesting point. Well, mummy, it's not an alien. And we have come to the end of another show, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us as I'm clicking my links closed here. It has been fun. I've had a good time tonight.
Yeah.
It's been great. I hope everyone else has had a wonderful time as well. I'd love to thank everyone for watching the show. For those of you who are watching live, those of you who are listening, watching later, thank you so much for joining us and for bringing us into your lives. Chat room, thank you so much for being there in the chat. And over on YouTube, thank you for chatting it up on YouTube. Looks like you're having good times in all of these places. And I would love to take this moment to say thank you to Fada for helping out in moderating the chat rooms, doing social media, and for helping us with the show notes at the end of our YouTube notes, to Identity 4 for recording our show every week. Thank you so much for that. To Brandon for simulcasting us to Facebook. Thank you for helping us on that front. We have other moderators in our chat room. Who else is there? Ben Rothig, Gord McLeod. You're over there in our main chat room helping out, making sure everyone pretty minds their P's and Q's pretty well over there. So thanks everyone for being awesome, having good, healthy, decorum-filled conversations. That's what we like around here. Now, thank you to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to Paul Disney, G. Burton Lattimore, Richard Onimus, Ken Hayes, Harrison Prothers, Charlene Henry, Joshua Fury, Andy Gross, Steve DeBell, Alex Wilson, Tony Steele, Ed Dyer, Craig Landon, John Ratnaswamy, Mark Missaros, Jack, Matthew Litwin, Jason Roberts, Bill K., Bob Calder, Time Jumper 319, Kyle Washington, Eric Knapp, Richard, Brian Condren, Aiden Jeff, Kevin Reardon, Dave Neighbor, Krzysztof Zuknirek. I'm sorry, I'm not saying that as well as I probably could. Noah Zemke, Jim Seabright, Ashish Pants, Jacqueline Boyster, Ulysses Adkins, Sarah Chavis, Richard Porter, Artyom, Rick Ramus, Paul, John McKee, Jason Olds, Brian Carrington, Christopher Dreyer, Lisa Slazewski, Jim Drapeau, Greg Riley, Sean Lamb, Ben Rothig, Steve Lesseman, Kirk Larson, Robert Aston, Rudy Garcia, Marjorie, Gary S., Robert Greg Briggs, Brendan Minish, Christopher Rappin, Flying Out, Aaron Luthen, Matt Sutter, Mark Hessenflow, Kevin Parachan, Byron Lee, E.O., Mark Tyrone Fong, and Keith Corsell. Thank you for all of your support on Patreon. I'd also like to thank Snooch for his support over on YouTube. That's right. There is support over on YouTube as well. If you are interested in supporting us, you can find information or helping out with This Week in Science. You can find information at patreon.com/thisweekinscience. Also, remember, you can help us out simply by telling your friends about TWIS. Next week, we will be back once again Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Pacific time, broadcasting live online. You can find us at twis.org/live. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel live. You can watch us on Facebook live. You can join our chat room, though. Chat rooms all over the place. The main one is at thetwis.org/live. And if you can't make it, it's okay because all of this stuff is recorded for posterity. You can find it at twis.org/YouTube. You can also find it at twis.org or facebook.com/thisweekinscience.
Thank you for enjoying the show. TWIS is also available as a podcast. Just Google This Week in Science in your iTunes directory, or if you have a mobile type device, you can look for the TWIS #4 Droid app in the Android Marketplace, or simply This Week in Science in anything Apple Marketplace.
For more information on anything you've heard here today, show notes will be available on our website. That's at www.twis.org, where you can also make comments and start conversations with the Hursts or other listeners.
Or you can contact us directly. Email Kirsten at thisweekinscience.com, Justin at twisminion@gmail.com, or Blair at blairbaz@twis.org. Just be sure to put TWIS, TWIS, some in their subject line, or your email will be spam filtered into oblivion. You can also ping us, if you like, on a Twitter type thing, where we are at TWIS Science, at Dr. Kiki, at Jacksonfly, and at Blair's Menagerie. We love your feedback. If there's a topic you'd like us to cover, address, a suggestion for an interview haiku that comes to you tonight, please let us know.
We'll be back here next week, hopefully a little less rusty, and we hope you'll join us again for more great science news.
And if you've learned anything from the show, remember,
it's all in your head.
This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science, it's the end of the world. So I'm setting up shop, got my banner unfurled. It says the scientist is in, I'm gonna sell my advice. Show them how to stop the robots with a simple device. I'll reverse global warming with a wave of my hand. And all it'll cost you is a couple of grand. This week's science is coming your way. So everybody listen to what I say. I use the scientific method for all that it's worth. And I'll broadcast my opinion all over the earth. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got one disclaimer and it shouldn't be news. That what I say may not represent your views, but I've done the calculations and I've got a plan. If you listen to the science, you may just yet understand that we're not trying to threaten your philosophy. We're just trying to save the world from jeopardy. And This Week in Science is coming your way. So everybody listen to everything we say. And if you use our method instead of rolling a die, we may rid the world of toxoplasma gondii. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 I've got a laundry list of items I want to address. From stopping global hunger to dredging Loch Ness. I'm trying to promote more rational thought, and I'll try to answer any question you've got. But how can I ever see the changes I seek when I can only set up shop 1 hour a week? This Week in Science is coming your way. You better just listen to what we say, and if you've learned anything from the words that we said, then please just remember it's all in your head. Cause it's This Week in Science. This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science. 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 This Week in Science. This Week in Science.
This week in science. This week in science. This week in science. This week in science.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of This Week in Science. TWIS, TWIS. Ta-da. Ta-da. Ta-da-da-da-da. Hey, everybody. Hey, we finished a show. We did it. The babysitter has left, so I'm keeping an ear out in case my son decides to wake up and start going, Mama, I'm alone in the house, because he's all the way up on the top floor and I'm in the basement.
So that's what happened. He got away from the babysitter, eh?
Yeah, she came down. That one of my distracted moments. She came down, was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry he came down here. Yeah.
You're like, can you not come down here though? Because I'm not done.
I'm not done yet.
That's so funny.
Why don't you just text me? Just text me. I'll text you back. It'll be easier. We'll do the texting thing. It'll be good. But yeah, Janiscu, Kai, he'd like to come to the show. He would like to come to the show, but
he needs to be allowed to stay up this late. Yeah.
Yeah. And if he has camp in the morning and he has to get up early for camp, and then he'll be cranky, and then he'll be mean to me, and I don't want that.
Mm-mm.
So he gets a babysitter and gets to go to bed and doesn't get to be on the show. So there. But he did want to tell everybody about his crawdad.
Yeah, that's good.
He's so excited about his crawdad. He came home, like, seriously, he was dirty. He comes home and he shows me his backpack. Mommy, I have surprise. Like, what do you have? He had taken all of his lunch. I had, put little plastic lunch Tupperware containers together for him. He didn't eat any of his food. He'd taken all of it out and filled up this one Tupperware container with river water, rocks, a crawdad, and a snail.
Oh my gosh.
Brought it home. There we go.
So I was just like, I wonder what the difference between a crawfish and a crawdad is.
Well, it's a crayfish and a crawdad.
Well,
I don't think they're different.
Crayfish, crawfish, crawdads, freshwater lobsters, mountain lobsters, mud bugs, and my personal favorite, yabbies.
Yabbies.
Yes, are all freshwater crustaceans resembling small lobsters. They're members of superfamilies Astacoida and Parastacoida.
But are these all just common names that get used generally for them, or are these all different kinds?
I'm looking.
I want to know if there's a difference. Is there a difference?
So from my understanding from our chat room, which is where I go when I'm not Googling.
And you want to know anything, right? Our chat room is
our chat room. Somebody was explaining that crayfish is the actual term for the Louisiana crayfish, but that they call them crawfish because they got crawls. That's not the Louisiana crawl, by the way. I just whole cloth and just drawled on them.
So crayfish comes from Old French,
which explains the Creole.
So, yes, Creole, yeah.
Right.
Esclavisse, which means
wait a minute.
Doesn't say what it means.
Wait, is my dad in the chat room?
Either that's your dad or somebody who has a weird sense of humor.
Fada said, welcome at Charles Sanford. Is my dad in the chat room? In the YouTube chat? Hello, Dad. Hi, Dad. What are you doing up late? How's your foot?
Okay.
Yeah, let's finish.
Mud bugs, yabbies. Some kinds of crayfish are known locally as lobsters, crawdads, mudbugs, and yabbies. In the eastern United States, crayfish is more common in the north, where Crawdad is heard more central and southwestern. Crawfish further south.
Crawfish. Right, Hot Rod, ask him a question that only my dad could know the answer to. And then let everybody know the answer to that question.
we would all be able to pass that test.
And then everyone could be my father. Yeah, Fada, that's my dad. Supposedly. Does that mean that my dad now has a YouTube account? What? So confused.
Crayfish got that name for acting crazy on a New Year's
Crazy. That's right. LJ Moon.
Cray.
Yabby. Where did the yabby come from?
I don't know, but it makes me smile.
No, yabby. There we go, yabby.
That's the sound they make when you boil them.
Yabby.
Yabby.
But seriously, this crawdad crayfish yabby thing that's in my house, land lobster of doom. Yes, it's great. It's cute. Kai's so excited about it, and he has already learned about invasive species as a result of it. So it has already been a learning experience. We'll learn. And he said, and now he wants to have more. He's like, I want a blue crawfish, whatever it is. I want this other kind. I want to have a boy and a girl, and I want to have baby crawfish. Kai wants to have many crawfish. We'll see.
Yeah, you should have like a whole we're
gonna get an aquarium. We'll get an aquarium and see what happens.
Oh, hey, guess what, guys? I was on Wi-Fi this whole time. I was plugged in.
What?
You were on Wi-Fi?
But I forgot to hit the button to make it go.
That's good Wi-Fi, though. I didn't notice any.
Yeah, that's really great.
Yeah. My Wi-Fi is pretty good as long as I'm right here next to the source of it. It's also, it can be.
I'm impressed. Good work.
Good
work, Wi-Fi.
So I wanted to talk about something
Okay.
that I don't think I brought up before. But it occurred to me one day. And I'm going to start with a roundabout way of going into it. Blair,
yes.
do you believe that the reintroduction of the North American gray wolf had a positive effect on the environment?
That's a good question. I haven't really done much looking into that.
Okay. Well, here's some of the effects of it. Because of this, right, there's been a lot more reforestation because the deer, which used to hang out in the woods, started going back out into the clearings and the clear areas because they wanted to make sure that they had good visibility because the wolf was back. And so their deposits were putting more plant life in places where it wasn't before. And they were fertilizing areas that were barren.
They weren't overeating. Yeah.
And there's this whole cascade of effects, like the beavers then came back and then they're knocking stuff down. Like this whole, right?
Uh-huh.
And I thought, wow, this is actually the best example of why reintroducing a mammoth, which could be an anchor for an ecosystem.
But how do you know that, Justin? The gray wolf was from this epoch.
But what I'm saying is a large megafauna creature, or a large creature like this, can have the dung that they deposit.
Yeah, no, I get that. But that's such a false equivalency.
I don't think it's a false equivalency. I think this is the best argument for a reintroduction.
We have cows. Why do we need mammoths? We have cows. They wander the plains. They cause erosion. They're damaging the fields and streams, but they are also transporting grass seed and many things around with them. Cows, cattle are like modern day mammoths here. It's the megafauna for
large an environmental driver.
Okay, but to your point then,
as a mammoth.
Where would they go?
Canada, obviously.
Let's talk to them about that. Also, they have
Canada,
their large.
you want my
They have their
mammoth?
large things. They have their large animals.
Or Montana.
I don't think Montana's large enough.
Montana's good. Yeah.
Also, it's too hot. It gets too hot in the summer there for a woolly mammoth.
I don't know what the range of a mammoth is temperature-wise. Do you?
Cold.
How
They're
cold?
furry.
Not necessarily that cold. Because look,
Elephants have no fur, and they're in the warm.
right. Where were bison? Great Plains. Oh yeah, why do they got all that fur? It's not even snowy there all the time.
Yeah, but they're not. They don't have fat deposits like woolly mammoths do.
What's the fat deposits of a woolly mammoth? How do you know this much about it? You're assuming
because it lived in the Ice Age.
Because they lived before the Ice Age too.
Oh,
there's mammoth bones in South America. I don't know. Look, I'm just saying we're over assuming that we know everything there is to know about the habitat.
Go ahead and put an elk in Mexico and see how it does. That's not even close to the same.
But I think you're over.
Take a gray wolf and put it in Mexico where the Mexican wolf lives.
I think
that's very different.
On a limb and say you're speaking with great confidence, but very little knowledge about the climate and habitat of a woolly mammoth.
Okay.
Just because they're woolly doesn't necessarily mean they were a one climate pony.
So here's another overarching question. Yes. Why take an animal that was taken out through natural processes and bring that back instead of bringing back an animal that was taken out via unnatural processes?
What exactly would be the difference? I mean,
there's a huge difference. One is currently adapted to the world we live in climatically, right, and the other is not. The other was taken out in the larger Earth processes on its own. So why wouldn't you restore something? Why wouldn't you restore something that has a current niche?
No, and I agree with that. I actually do agree with that.
Like the wolf. The wolf had a niche.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally agree with that. But I also think that there might be a niche that revolved around something as big as a woolly mammoth that we're kind of missing, that could be reintroduced. And I'm not sure I completely believe with the natural processes thing. A big part of the overlap of the disappearance of woolly mammoth and the rest of the megafauna that was in the Americas is the introduction of human beings. Mm-hmm. And I get that we may think that 10,000 years ago was a really long time, but in the span of the history of life forms on this planet and the changes that have taken place in the ecosystem, blink of the eye. It's nothing.
I still maintain there's not space for them.
Well, I mean, not in San Francisco, obviously.
No, okay.
Yeah,
so in Africa, places. Okay, let's look at elephants. In Africa, so first of all, 96 elephants a day are currently being killed. So I don't know if that's a winning battle, putting mammoths back on this planet. But secondly, elephants traverse thousands of miles at a time to follow food. They have these huge migrations. They cover vast periods of land. So where is that space that is not currently being used? Animals are going extinct left and right because we are encroaching on their space. So why take an animal that would require perhaps the largest landmass that we would need and put that one back?
Okay, so two arguments there. First of all, Canada, almost entirely unused by people. Second, I would say, like, you're almost making an argument for not preserving elephants if they go. And I don't think that that's what you intend, but that's the other side of your argument. If we can agree on one thing, it's that we believe that we should preserve elephants.
No. So we should. So the argument. No. You're twisting her argument because her argument is that humanity is encroaching on the elephant habitat. Right. So what we need to do is preserve the elephants and the elephant habitat, if at all possible. But if there is not room, if there's barely room for elephants, how could there be room for mammoths as well? How could there be room for the other megafauna?
Nobody's using most of Canada, and nobody wants to. Like this
I
is the
think you're
beautiful
wrong
thing
about that,
Coast
but
Canada is a tundra, right? Like that people are like not in at all. Right? And
So-
I think Canada would appreciate the tourism.
Let's
would come with-
let's get elephants, give them a fur coat, take them to Canada.
So
let's
This
if-
try
could
that
be
out.
helping
If
both.
that's true,
Right.
Justin, now you're proving my point. Because if most of Canada is untouched, then why would you introduce a giant species to tumble an ecosystem
Oh no,
on purpose?
Because I don't think it's going to tumble the ecosystem. I think it was the linchpin, the anchor of an ecosystem, which is now just mostly a frozen tundra. And I think you could be actually bringing
But that's not
back
true.
a more
There's-
diverse
There's
environment
so
that
much
used
animals.
to exist there. I
There's-
don't know.
You're looking at it and you're looking at a frozen plain and saying it's dead. It is filled
No,
with
no.
biodiversity.
I'm not saying that it's
Filled.
dead. I'm not saying that it's dead, but I'm saying the argument against putting the wolf back into North America is the same argument against putting the mammoth in Canada. I'm saying the idea
No,
that
the argument
there's not
against the wolf is
room
cattle
and-
ranchers not wanting their cattle
Yeah.
being attacked by wolves. That is the only pretty much the only argument that I've ever heard against
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And
But the
again,
result
I will
was- the
reiterate
result
that
was
wolves
it
were here
brought
50
back the ecology of the ecosystem.
Okay, brought back.
They
What are
did.
you trying to bring back? Show me what you're trying to bring back, because I think that's what's really missing here. Is you're making this huge cognitive leap that there's something that we're missing that mammoths would give us.
And I don't think that the reintroduction of the gray wolf brought back. What it did is it restabilized.
Yeah,
the
it was population control.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
population control, and it was an
Yeah.
ecological stabilization. It wasn't something that you wouldn't. Yeah,
But it was more.
The ecology was missing that predator.
Like it brought forests back to areas where forests weren't, which brought beavers back, which brought
Mhm.
fish stocks back. I mean, it had a catalyst effect. And I think if the mammoth was there today, and the environment was whatever that ecology is, you would be against removing it. The fact that it just recently got removed.
But
Sure.
okay, so then why does the mammoth have better rights to the vegetation in that space than the current herbivores that live there? Because it would start out competing those animals that
No.
are currently living there.
I totally disagree. I think it would invigorate it, and that's what the wolf did. I mean,
Based on what? No, the wolf is a predator. It's not the same trophic level.
No, but the downstream effects of the wolf were the deer going into the open spaces and adding.
No,
more
it was wolves
vegetation, which
eating
brought
deer.
forest.
It
No,
was
no,
it was
that
wolves.
wasn't
eating
the
deer.
whole thing. That was only one tiny data point or one piece of the big puzzle of that ecology. See, and that's the thing.
That's
It's like,
no, that's
if
not
you-
right.
on one aspect of the mammoth. Wait, no, it absolutely is right. I don't normally like. So I probably do normally say that I'm right, but so I'll be fair and say that I probably.
But
say
you're
that-
also
But I will
you're
give it
comparing
this
apples and
time.
oranges. This is a complete apples and oranges comparison.
which are both round and edible, so they're not very different. They're
Sure.
very similar. They're
No, one
very
has
similar.
One has
They
an
both
edible
grow on
peel, one
trees.
does
They're
not.
both
There's a
round.
lot of
You can
things.
buy both of them in the store for about the same price. You can eat both of them as a snack. Like they're very similar.
There's a lot of
Exactly. I
debate
totally
going
agree
on
with you.
right now.
Oh my
A
goodness.
lot of debate. This is what you love us for.
But I do think that I mean, hey, okay. So you know what? The information is out there. The information is out there. There was an ecological benefit that the woolly mammoth gave to its ecology. Would you agree?
At the time, yes.
At the time, which was very
Yes.
recently,
Yes.
not very long ago.
So, okay, but there are animals that are currently disappearing that we could help bring back that actually have direct impact on our day-to-day life and health on this
Sure.
planet. And so to decide to bring back woolly mammoths,
such as a polar bear.
polar bears. So here's the thing.
Hang on, such as polar bears, right? So if there were more, I don't know what's even up there. Is it caribou? Is it elk? I don't know what's up.
Both, yes.
If there was more vegetation for them to feed on, which was fertilized by mammoths who walk great distances, dropping large amounts of fertilizer, replenishing what vegetation
what are they
is
eating?
available.
What are the mammoths eating?
It's whatever they want. They're very
the
big.
grasses that those animals that you just mentioned would otherwise be eating, which is few and far between in that area, and they would outcompete them.
No, they wouldn't, because the ultimate addition of them to the environment would be a net positive. I'm assuming
by the time that happened, animals would be extinct. I'm telling you, this is you would drive one of those antelope species at least to extinction. You would devastate the population if you put mammoths up there
for millions of years or whatever. It's like, how do you?
But it's different. Everything's different than it was.
Not that different. You think 10,000 years is that big of a deal to the ecology of this planet? That's nothing.
Yeah.
No, it is for plant life and plant distribution. Absolutely, it is.
I haven't even gotten to the giant sloth yet. So if I'm getting this much resistance now, can't even imagine what's coming next.
It's important to focus on habitats instead of animals. So as I am talking about constantly,
that's my point.
All day and night, which is why saving animals, cloning animals, reestablishing animal populations does not mean anything if there's not habitats. And the habitats are actually the most important thing. And the tundra are not some of the most productive habitats. There are habitats on our planet that because of their position,
make it more productive.
Because of their position on the planet in the shape, rotation, and tilt that we currently have. The equatorial belt is where we need to be focusing.
Okay. This is a good point, but I also suggest that I think that what you're doing, and you are going to disagree with me or not. Maybe you'll say, Justin, that is a good point. Or you might say, no, that's totally wrong. You're going to say one of those things, maybe something in the middle that I haven't even thought of yet. But I believe that you believe that any one animal, as we're talking about, that gets pulled out of a habitat will change the habitat.
Pulled out is the operative phrase. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you think pulling out would have a negative consequence, but putting in would also have a negative consequence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's this thing called equilibrium.
That was in that just got pulled out, you would put it right back in again.
I would not put it right back in again. There is a reintroduction.
I said right out. Just like today it got taken out. You'd put it right back in again.
Yeah.
Okay. The wolf was gone for what, 20, 30 years? You'd put that back in again. Okay.
So that's a difficult thing. I never said that I endorsed that, did I?
Okay. Oh, well, no, I guess you didn't. It worked out really well. Maybe you should jump on the bandwagon. Now it's 100 years. See what I'm getting at, though? We have this idea that time has concluded the possibility that we should act. And that's what I disagree with. Now, somewhere between 50 years and 10,000 years, there may be plenty of room for debate. But I think it shouldn't be ruled out that simply based on the argument. That's all.
I think something that's also important to consider is in reintroduction, or 10,000 years later or 100 years later, how adapted to whatever habitat are you putting this animal in is the animal. So there is definitely something to be said. Like we were talking about the bacteria and the lanternfish during the show and how they directed each other's evolution, right? They wouldn't be who they are, what they are without each other. And that is the exact same thing with the environment in which you find an animal. The lanternfish would not need the bioluminescence if it weren't in the dark. This is the environment it is inhabiting, and the environment has an influence on the organism. The organism has an influence on the environment as well. So, Justin, you're arguing to change the environment or to do whatever. You want to put the animal organism in the environment because it's going to be beneficial. But do we know what influence the environment is going to have on the organism 10,000 years later? We don't. And so I think it is a very touchy subject because it's not one direction. it's not just this one directional effort that will be made. It's, that's many layered and lots of different, it's a wicked web we weave.
Yeah. What if they don't have the right microbiome to digest the plants that are currently in that space?
Exactly. Yeah. All sorts of things. What if they are lacking sensory function at a particular level to be able to respond to particular stimuli in the environment? What are, who knows? There are all sorts of levels at which the adaptation may not be appropriate, where they, just putting an organism in an environment may not work. I mean, but then we talk about invasive species, you drop in a red-butted lobster thing into a stream and it takes over the blue-butted crawfish lobster things.
So, all right, I'm gonna put all of my faith in this issue, or all my arguing in this issue, in the hands of Dale Poco in the Freenode chat room. Dale is a citizen of Canada, and he lives in he's what, like I said, nobody's using Canada. Okay, Dale is using Canada. He lives in not the most populated portion of Canada. And Dale, would you be willing to allow mammoths to live in Canada? And we'll wait patiently. Yeah, okay. Well, he says, yes, I am. But see, there could be a delay. Maybe he's saying, yes, I am to I live in Canada, not yes, I am to okay with. All right, Dale, you got to get a little bit more verbose. You got to say, yes, I am okay with the mammoth in Canada, or something along that lines. Otherwise, I've...
Yeah. Silence.
Well, there's a delay. This is why I'm giving the second chance for the...
He says, in my backyard?
Oh, no, right. There's a lot of Canada. Like consider your backyard to the North Sea. Somewhere between your backyard and the North Sea.
If Mammoth wants your backyard, Mammoth's in your backyard.
Yeah, but wouldn't that be awesome? Hey,
I wish I were,
look outside.
There's
a mammoth in the backyard.
I think this would be a great little book series for kids. Mammoth in the backyard. I wish I could draw. Okay, anyone who's an artist out there, there's a book for you if you're an illustrator.
There it is. Dale.
Maybe I can write the book for you.
Now. This is Dale, quoting voice. I have no reluctance to mammoths. There it is, folks. Canada approves.
Right.
Canada tested, Canada approved.
That's because that might not be fair, because I did sort of impose, and Canadians are really nice, and I was sort of like, okay, there's gonna be a mammoth in your backyard tomorrow. All right, well, yeah, that's fine. Like that, they're really nice people, so it's also like kind of unfair.
Okay.
But I will take that still as the thing I linchpinned my entire argument on, and I will count that as winning the reintroduction of the mammoths to Canada debate.
Right. So brought up in the YouTube chat room, people are concerned that bringing the mammoth back is going to cause a peanut shortage because mammoths eat peanuts.
They probably do. They probably love them.
Yeah. And then my dad was wondering whether wasn't the mammoth driven out by early man?
Right.
I think part of it was climate change, but there was, early man in North America.
Invasive species.
Them. Yes. So part of it, and so my dad's comment on that, saying perhaps it was not a simple lack of adaptation by the mammoth.
No, I totally agree. Yeah. Actually, one of the things, and I don't know that this was I don't know that this was a America's thing though, but there was some sort of discussion around part of the effectiveness of humans hunting mammoths had to do with the domestication of dogs. There's like this crossover with dog domestication on the hunt.
The dogs that died out.
Right. This is what I'm saying though. Like this story is out there somewhere, and I don't have, like, I can't remember if this was in Americas. Because if it was Americas, yeah, these are the dogs that aren't like here anymore. or if this was like European, like like Russian mammoths. Like I don't know. I don't remember the story, but there was like this crossover with finding, mammoth kill sites and maybe a dead dog in the same site, kind of a thing. But it was also obviously human cutting of the thing. Like there was this humans using hunting dogs to maybe chase the mammoths around until they got tired, and then we just walked up and stuck them with spears.
We still need to. I tried once upon a time to get the one of the researchers who's potentially involved in mammoth DNA and mammoth resurrection.
Play
stuff,
them this segment of me.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. We need to get an actual. But if we have an actual interview conversation on the show, it can't be this. This is after show.
Right, this is exactly what
it will be. Okay, so we can never have that interview.
That's right.
No, we'll just have to do it on.
We need to have a.
We'll have to do it on a day.
I know
that Justin's not here.
Right? When Justin
like, and apparently Justin is having technical difficulties. He's muted and the camera's gone dark. We'll see if we can get him back. But now on to the interview.
On to the interview about mammoths. Let's talk about resurrecting a mammoth.
Okay, so there's a group of herbaceous plants. The 2014 study tells us that there's a group of herbaceous plants called forbs that were the most important primary food source for Ice Age megafauna. It's no longer with us. So
because the megafauna are gone.
So what would bring it back?
Well, if we can bring a mammoth back, I'm sure we could bring it back.
Okay, so now do you see how this is silly?
Almost. But now it's just a plant. Like, big deal. Like, right?
Oh my God.
Like, can you imagine?
So what about when that chokes out the food that the current animals eat?
Can you imagine what the lush green Canadian tundra once looked like? With its palm trees and its whatever the kind of plant you said it was.
Yes, take us there, Justin.
Well, I mean, like it's like sort of like this story, like my ancestors were lumberjacks from the what is now the Sahara Desert. We were really good at it, right? Yeah, people and loss of these megafauna has an impact on environment that we actually should be able to figure out. And this plant that you just described is one of them. This is part, but you assume it's only the megafauna that are drawn to this. What was it? What was the downstream effects of pulling this plant that lived and existed on this?
Well, how do you know which disappeared first?
Millions of years, right? Huh?
How do you know which disappeared first? Maybe the plant disappeared first.
Right, but I mean, when you so it's pretty clear humans were like, kind of doing a lot of hunting, right? Unless we ate the plant, like maybe that was really yummy. I don't know, but my point is, we start pulling out these things and saying it's not important, even though we have a pretty clear picture that mankind was involved in the destruction of this ecosystem. I think as a, responsible entity, sentient entity on the planet, we should give the ecosystem we destroyed in our younger days another shot. I mean, what else are we doing? Like, are we doing other positive things?
My God. Okay.
If you are just tuning in, you are watching This Week in People Reading Things on the Internet.
Yes, that's right.
So apparently need glasses.
There were two major population crashes in woolly mammoths. One was around 280,000 years ago.
Long time ago.
And the second was 12,000 years ago at the end of the Ice Age.
Humans. Yeah, at the end. Like, they got to the end of the Ice Age and they're like, woohoo, the Ice Age is over. And then all these humans came out and started hunting.
Before their extinction, one of the populations of mammoth accumulated numerous genetic defects due to small population. Okay. They lost their... Okay. Interesting. There's another population died out before human arrival due to habitat shrinkage, resulting from post-ice age sea level rise. Climate change shrank suitable mammoth habitat from 7,700,000 square kilometers to 800,000 square kilometers from 42,000 to 6,000 years ago. So that's pretty substantial. It shrunk to 10% of its range due to climate change.
So did we. Depends.
Which, by the way, would increase pressure from humans. So it's both, not either, is the thing. Even if it was humans, it was exacerbated by the fact that they had less space due to climate change after the Ice Age. There we go. That's what I found out. Yeah, wow. That's pretty substantial that they went from almost 8 million square kilometers to 800,000 square kilometers.
Yeah, pretty brutal.
Massive.
That's
a level of scale. Yeah.
Yeah, that's 8 million square kilometers of space for the stable
but that's
population.
Climate change. So if climate change takes place, there's no point in trying to preserve species that aren't built for it, right?
You know what? We're all gonna die.
Preserve habitats, not species. It'll be written on my grave.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and we've talked so much. I mean, it's kind of the fun idea of bringing a species back, but I love this, there are subspecies, there are hybrid species. We keep seeing that there are, even beyond bacteria, it's in plants and in higher organisms as well, the swapping of genetic material, genes jumping from one organism to another, horizontal gene transfer. I mean, really, we really are the organisms of the selfish genes, right? The genes that are pushing everything forward and driving it. And it's just this continuum of genetic material that is bubbling and percolating into living form. And, chemistry made live. And yeah, I mean, bringing back a mammoth, that's cool. It's like a party trick.
No,
Exactly.
I'm actually not for that.
But then if you're preserving ecosystems and habitats and all the diversity within it, you are not just, going, ta-da, here's this genome. All the genes within it are the importance.
And that's the point that I think I'm making now, is that I'm no longer in favor of bringing back the mammoth. I'm in favor of bringing back the entire habitat that the mammoth existed.
Okay. Yeah, you go ahead and work on that. Meanwhile, if
all the genomes that came and associated with it, whether they were plants or animals or whatever there was, microbes
coming soon to Justin's biodome.
Bring back the paleo.
It's Ice Age Canada. So
the Ice Age.
If a habitat really needed something like a mammoth, and you left it alone, it would happen again.
In a long time. Yeah. We're going the wrong way right now to get more mammothy type things on the planet. I mean, melting, warming.
Yeah, that brings small animals is the thing. Animals get smaller when it gets hotter.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think the Earth right now is going in the right direction for mammothy type uprisings.
The thing is, the Earth is pretty good at self-sustaining, and I feel like the problem is there has to be some form of short-term stability because the Earth's changing way too fast for everything, but there also has to be space, which is back to the whole habitat thing, right? Like there has to be space for nature to do what it does. And we need those two things. We need to slow rate of change, and we need to make sure there's wild space. And then the earth can figure it out.
Space for the wild barley.
Yeah.
To run and roam.
Bread. Bread.
Wild bread. I want to chase loaves of bread on the plains.
Should listen to some bread. Did you ever listen to Bread?
Oh, yes, I have listened to Bread. I know my
Bread.
dad has.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the two of you are talking about.
It's a band from the like 70s.
Man, yeah.
I think it's from the 70s. It's very like
Bread?
it's a very like kind of hippy dippy but pretty rated G, like chill out. Hey, do 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 do. You know, stuff like that. You know? That's very Bread.
Hey, with the yeasties.
Yeah.
No, that's the Monkeys. Yeah.
Good old Bread. Ed, we can't kill the mosquitoes. We learned they're pollinators.
Oh, that's right. They're pollinators. We can't do that.
See? Dominoes.
Oh, Bread. They weren't that good at grammar. Title of one of their songs, Baby, I'm a Want You.
Baby, I'm a want you.
I mean, I'm sure it flowed really
Baby,
well in the
I'ma want
moment.
you, yeah.
It probably sounds exactly like that, Justin.
Oh my goodness.
I have to look it up.
I can't. Yeah, I can't play any of this on the show. It'll get us dinged for copyright infringement.
Yeah.
You think they have somebody
Anyway.
skip the copyright? Who's got the rights alive to Bread?
To Bread? For sure they do.
What's happening?
For sure. Yes, Guitar Man. Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, it's even slower than that, Justin. It's like it's slow jams.
Oh, soft rock. It was soft rock.
Baby, I'ma want you. So good. Oh,
Is everybody going to, what is it, the YouTubes that you're finding things on?
yeah.
Yes.
Baby,
Are you
I'ma
going to the
want
YouTubes
you.
to find Bread?
Do 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 do. You know?
Diddle-doo-doo. What is going on? I need to go eat some bread.
I need to go to bed.
That's right. Bedtime. It is late. It's 10:46. I gotta go make sure that my child is still doing well. I'm so far down in the basement.
It's going
I'm
to
so
take
far
15
back
seconds for my content to load. Nah, I'm out.
Oh, can I show you one really fun thing just a quick
Yeah.
oh wait, no, I used the wrong thing. Hold on. I'm going to do a Yeah. Okay. I'm going to screen share this with you. I'm very excited that I got something fixed here. My internet speed.
Whoa. You're so fast, it's tomorrow where you are.
I know, it's tomorrow already. We're fast. 180 megabits per second. I'm very excited about this. It's my new speed. And I tested and I was able to stream to Twitch TV today, which I was very excited about.
Nice.
I need to check that software that I got to see. I think there's still a delay on it, but it may be less of a delay now with my fastness. We have technology, hopefully working with me to allow some new things. We'll see.
Hooray.
Yay, new things.
Yeah, and I got orange chairs. You see, I can't like.
Oh, that's fun.
I got orange
that's
chairs.
really awesome.
Orange chairs, and they go in here, and we can have sit down interviews.
That's very fun. I'll be right there.
Come here. Come to Portland, and you can sit in an orange chair with me, and we shall talk science. We shall we shall speak of silly things, candle wax and string.
Shoes and ships and sealing wax. cabbages and kings, and
And
why the sea
science.
is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings.
Do the pigs have wings?
Callooh, Calais, let's run away.
It chortled in his joy.
Like cabbages and kings. You know?
Callooh, Callooh, Calais. Callooh, Calais. Urta 27. Justin, did you ever live in St. Helena? No, I did not either. I visited. It's very nice.
Isn't that the last stop on the
Helena's
wine
beautiful.
train?
It's lovely.
I think it is, right? Doesn't the
I have
wine train stop in St. Helena?
Yeah. Ed from Connecticut. I have 2 orange chairs. 1 for 2 people. 2 for 1 person.
One chair for 2 people. The other one's for no one.
Yes. 2 orange chairs. It's a regular, just a lot of orange chairs down here. That's all. So many things going on. Chairs, twitching, faster bandwidth. It's very exciting. All right, everyone. I think it's time to go to bed. We've argued about mammoths.
And gotten nowhere.
If you get a chance to check it out, I shared a link today on Twitter of a radio telescope's image of the center of our galaxy, the black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy. And it's beautiful. It's amazing. It's crazy. Awesome.
Is it full of diamonds?
Probably, but you don't see them. It's just very bright with radio signals. Very exciting. And filaments and very exciting things. Yeah, that's awesome. What else is happening? Oh, hug a zookeeper this week. It is National Zookeeper Week.
It sure is.
Yeah, but they always get so awkward about it. Like, I don't even know if they understand. Like, it's a day. Like, I do it. Me and my daughter go to the zoo this time every year, go around hugging zookeepers, and they all are like a little freaked out by it. I don't know why. You
could give them a virtual hug.
Yeah.
Send your best wishes to social media accounts of zoos. That is appreciated.
Okay.
We love that.
Maybe I'll take it down a notch.
You could bring cards to the zoo and drop them off, and they make their way to the zookeepers. They do. It's pretty adorable.
That's nice.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
We had our zookeeper appreciation lunch today. It was very cute. All the docents make a special lunch for all of the zookeepers, and they let the people who keep the zoo in other ways come by too, like horticulture and the vet staff, and us education folks.
I just think it's weird that the special lunch includes zebra steaks. It's always been a weird thing. I thought they would have that as on the menu. It's kind of like, So,
yeah, it's in poor taste. It was just vanilla and chocolate cake, but it did seem inappropriate to put the raspberry filling in there.
I missed something. I was typing in the chat room. I stopped paying attention.
Always dangerous.
Yep. Something about
we count on getting through each week that Kiki will tune out at some point. That's right when we start talking about things like this. Okay. Say goodnight, Blair.
Good night, Blair. Say good night, Justin.
Good night, Justin.
Good night, Kiki.
Good night, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us tonight for This Week in Science. We'll be back again next week. And I do hope that everyone has a very science-y week. Thank you so much. Good night. Where's my off button?